Welcome to the Mormon News Roundup. I am your humble host, D-Base, and that is Talent on Loan from Kolob. We've got a great episode on tap for you tonight. We're going to have a little after show as well in case anybody wants to stick around and ask me any questions. You can follow the link that's in the description below if you want to join the after party. I am willing to take all takers, including the haters. I welcome them. I've also got a couple of other things that I got planned for the after show. So if you want to make a late night with me, this is the time to do it. In the meantime, let's cover some Mormon news. Let's go.
Welcome to the Mormon News Roundup, your go-to source for the latest headlines and critical analysis on all things LDS.
Breaking news.
Join D-Vase.
Mormon News Roundup.
That's Talent on Loan from Kolob. Every Sunday and Monday night.
We will uncover the truth behind the news that matters most to the Mormon community.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. It's September 22nd, 2024. Welcome back to another episode of the Mormon News Roundup. I am your humble host, Steve-Ace. That's Talent on Loan from Kolob. I am the king of the sons of Provo. And this episode, we're going to be delving into the contemporary issues in Mormonism. This is episode 133. But before I get started, I'd like to welcome onto my program my fabulous co-host, Rene. Rene, welcome to the Mormon News Roundup.
Thank you. I am so happy to be back with you, D-Vase. I missed you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. You've come onto this program a couple of times now, and you're back for more. So I really appreciate that. Who are you, by the way, and what are you all about?
I am just a grandma living part-time in Salt Lake and part-time in Arizona with my fabulous husband of 50 years. I am someone who resigned membership from the Mormon Church 4 years ago, and I am in the process of becoming visible.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. Speaking of becoming visible, how do you like this thumbnail that I put together with you with the lawyers? You're going to give us the straight. How do you like that?
That's perfect. I'm always so curious when people find a shot for their thumbnail. And I was like, where'd you find
that? I don't know. I've seen a few pictures of you out there. Yeah. And what are we going to be going over this week? What's our agenda here for the Mormon News Roundup, episode 133?
You know, there's never a slow week in the world of Mormonism. And this week was no different. We're going to be covering the Salt Lake Temple rebuild, poor Nemo the Mormon, his excommunication maybe, and the Gaddy lawsuit, the Huntsman lawsuit, and so much more.
Yeah, we have a fantastic episode on tap. Let's start with the Salt Lake Temple retrofit, which has been going on for about 4 years now. Absolutely tremendous. Let me pull up the actual video of this for you. The baptistries are increasing when visitors enter into the new Salt Lake Temple. They will step into a holy space, and this has been 4 years in the making. And look at these pictures here. What do you think about this new? You know, you're an interior designer, right? How do you feel about this retrofit here? Ceiling rooms are increasing. What do you think?
It's beautiful. I mean, I've never seen so much, you know, mahogany or whatever, the cherry wood or whatever, this beautiful, I love that one, with the open skyline. That is amazing. No doubt it's absolutely beautiful. It's also looks very, very expensive. That's amazing. Yeah. I'm curious about the color green. I love it. It's a very popular color, very inviting, very warm. You know, it's the color of money. So there's that. But yeah, it's no doubt it's a beautiful building. I you know, the thing, D-Vase, the thing that I thought was hilarious, I looked up the Vatican. The Vatican was built in the current Vatican was built in 1506, and it's managed somehow to stay around this long. And when you go down Salt Lake, it is amazing, the construction that's going on. The Beehive House, all of the buildings on Temple Square. It's amazing, you know, less than 200 years and we're having to knock everything down and rebuild it.
President Nelson is definitely big into the retrofitting of all of these temples. And I'm sure that this came with a tremendous cost, probably in the tens of millions of dollars, maybe even more. This is in a very, very expensive building to go through the earthquake proofing. It's been almost 5 years. They're going to significantly increase it. They're gutting the Vatican of Mormonism. All of those memories, all of those treasured memories from going through the Salt Lake Temple, it's going to become more of a McDonald's type, one-size-fits-all sort of experience, which is exactly what President Nelson is all in favor of. Let's see what Jasmine over there at Scripture Plus has to say about harmonizing the sacred past and the future, a look inside of Salt Lake Temple's interior renovations. Let's hear how she spins this one.
To be honest with you guys, I'm kind of sad about these changes, but I'm also more convinced than ever that it's because of these changes that this is going to be the temple of prophecy. As someone who loves history and temples and the ritual drama aspect of our temples, the idea that we're going to be taking out the murals and the progressive room structure of the Salt Lake Temple does hurt me a little bit. I feel like there was something tangibly beautiful and ancient about progressing through an architectural and spiritual heavenly ascent back to the presence of God. But I can be sad about this change and yet recognize that the divine prophesied purpose of this temple goes far beyond my own nostalgia or historical interests. This temple is here to change the world. As part of this newsroom article, it revealed new details about the renovation. The progressive 5-room structure of the endowment session will be replaced with 5 separate endowment rooms that will be stationary, except for using the veil room or terrestrial room at the end. And everything will be experienced through a film presentation instead of with live actors, and the historic murals will not remain in the temple. The murals themselves simply physically couldn't be preserved while making the necessary structural, safety, and accessibility upgrades to the temple, so they're going to remove what they can to be kept and displayed in the church history library. The capacity is pretty drastically expanding. The temple is going from 1 to 2 baptistries. It's going from 13 to 22 sealing rooms. And as previously noted, it's going from 1 to 5 simultaneous endowment sessions. But here's why, despite feeling a sense of loss, why I ultimately believe this is both inspired and necessary for God's purposes. This version of the temple is the temple of prophecy. This is the temple that's going to stand through the millennium. Isaiah prophesied that in the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the tops of the mountains and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. Isaiah's most immediate context was referring to the Jerusalem temple, but Latter-day Saints have prophetically applied this to the house of the Lord established in the Rocky Mountains. But the Salt Lake Temple, as it had previously existed, couldn't fully realize its potential. At most, it could accommodate about 200 people in a single endowment session, and it was very limited in its accessibility to all nations. The performative nature of the live acted endowment meant that it was less accessible to people with hearing impairment, mobility restrictions, and without a knowledge of English. Transitioning the experience of these sacred ordinances to film means that the flagship temple of the church will be the most accessible to anyone who wants to come from any nation and worship in the house of the God of Jacob, as Isaiah prophesied. I'm guessing, just spitballing here, that capacity is going to be increased from about 200 at a given time to easily over 600 per hour, depending on what their rotating session schedule is going to be. And it's going to be available with subtitles for the hearing impaired and in over 90 languages. Even from a historical perspective, I think there's some encouraging changes here, because they're upgrading the more disjointed and austere-looking architecture from the 1960s renovation to a more seamless Victorian era aesthetic from top to bottom, end to end. And you just know that the church is going to make this the largest and most elaborate open house in history. When this temple was first dedicated in 1893, there weren't very many people who were allowed inside before it was dedicated and sealed off from the public. I believe that when this temple's completed, all nations will flow unto it to see what's inside. And those who feel inspired to join us will, as Isaiah said, go up to the mountain of the Lord to learn of God's ways and walk in his covenant path.
So whatever you can say about Jasmine, she definitely does do a very good job of summarizing these particular issues. No more will you be walking from room to room, which was really one of Salt Lake Temple's trademarks. It was that and the Manti Temple, and all of the special murals have been ripped down. You know, it's becoming much more of a Mick Temple, like I said before, much more standardized, and the special character of the Salt Lake Temple is going to be lost. There's a lot to be sad about this particular renovation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I have to agree, D-Vase, and I have to tell you, I'm a little cynical and a little biased when it comes to this, because as the mother of a severely disabled child that was in a wheelchair, there are so many buildings that do not have accessibility. And so when you talk about making this Salt Lake Temple more accessible, I get a little bit riled, because, you know, simple things like the automatic door that they have in many public buildings is on some LDS stake buildings or chapels, but not all of them. The doors may be wide, but once you open the door, you can't get in the rooms because they'll stack the chairs right up to the door. And there were so many times that my son and I had to sit in the foyer because we literally could not get into the room, or there was not room for a wheelchair in the chapel. So when I hear people talk about how fabulous this is because it's going to be more accessible, I'm like, why don't you make the every Sunday buildings more accessible? And I also think there was something beautiful about that Salt Lake Temple being the original. And my husband and I were married in the Salt Lake Temple. And the reason we wanted to be married there was, that was one of the closest temples back in 1974. But also we wanted the experience of the live session. We wanted to go back in history and be there for the Mecca temple. And so I feel like, you know, as you mentioned, making it into a McTemple, like all the other temples, so we can all just sit in one room. And, you know, it takes away from the specialness of that beautiful building.
I do like how Jasmine acknowledged the fact that the supposed Isaiah prophecy in chapter 2, verses 2-4, which is on a stone now that is at the Salt Lake Temple, probably has nothing whatsoever to do with the temple. It has to do with the temple in Jerusalem, and that Mormons basically shoehorn that in to make it sound like it's a prophecy that has been fulfilled, even though it hasn't. This is obviously big news in the church, and, you know, I didn't realize that you'd been sealed in the Salt Lake Temple, but it's never going to be the same. And that's really one of President Nelson's hallmarks. He is not afraid to go after the most sacred cows in Mormonism, including changing the temple endowment, changing the promises you make in the temple, getting rid of, you know, the evil speaking of the Lord's anointed, or some of the more regressive, anti-feminist promises that women used to make. And he's even gutted the Vatican of Mormonism. He's left an indelible mark on the church, that's to be sure. In fact, this week also, speaking of temples, the ground is broken for a third temple in Wyoming here. This is the consecration of early saints comes to full circle in the Bighorn Basin with the groundbreaking of the Cody, Wyoming temple. And over there at Mormonish, Rebecca here tweeted this out here on her Facebook page that says that this was happened very quietly with very little fanfare here. Most of the people didn't even realize that this was happening. This was basically done as a dedicatory prayer. And this is the most amazing part about this. Listen to this dedicatory prayer here. We ask that people will feel the spirit of peace wash over them, granting them comfort and assurance that the presence of this temple will bring added joy, prosperity, beauty, and unity to the lives of the community. Peace in Cody for this particular temple. That seems a very ironic temple dedicatory prayer.
Yeah. And there's something that, you know, I always go back to that interview that was done on 60 Minutes about the SEC blunder of the church, where they're talking about transparency, secrecy, or confidentiality, and how secrecy and transparency they cause more problems than anything else. So trying to sneak things under the wire that people might not notice is never a good idea.
Yeah, and there's probably a reason that they did it, because this had so much controversy. There was so many protests, so many lawsuits. This took years of litigation, and they basically did it without very little fanfare, and they're breaking ground. Even though this is going to go to the Wyoming Supreme Court as well, it's not an absolute slam dunk that this is a done deal, but the church has gotten the basic green light on it, and they're going to go ahead with this dedication. They broke the ground on it. This will be the third temple that has been dedicated in Wyoming. And speaking of Nemo the Mormon there, Rene, you know, he's looking like, we don't know for sure, but it looks like he is getting the boot. We don't know that for certainty, but let's hear what Nemo the Mormon says about his membership here.
Communication. Next week, I will be facing a church disciplinary council that will seek to determine if I am in apostasy. And what have I done that's apostate, you might ask? Well, your guess is as good as mine, because you see, the church is refusing to give me any specific details of the charges against me, so I will be turning up to the meeting completely in the dark. As a result, I am hard at work preparing my defense, and this is where you can help me. I'm putting together a study of individuals who are willing to go on record and say that I did not weaken their faith, nor reduce their activity in the church. If that's you, or you'd just like to send me a message of support of any kind, make sure to send it in to nemoisinnocent@gmail.com by next Tuesday so I can forward it to my stake president. That email, once again, is Nemo.
So let me ask you this. Is Nemo in a state of apostasy? And number two, has he actually done anything wrong?
You know, he is such a perfect example of someone whose heart is so pure and who just wants, again, the secrecy, the transparency. He just wants the leaders of the church to do better. When you know better, you do better. And to try and admit that there were some things that were wrong, and let's just do better. And we're so sorry that we may have misled some of you, whatever. He's just asking for that. And then because of that, they're kicking him out. It's so, to me, that's more telling than any excuse or any apology that could be given. And what I find ironic, Dives, is I just attended the Faith Matters conference, where there are so many apologists who are basically, they're not calling out specifics, but they're asking the brethren to do better, but they do it in a kind primary voice. And because they don't mention anyone individually, nothing is done to these people. And I just find it so hypocritical and ironic that if you actually are just transparent, you will get excommunicated. But if you can hide it and mix your opinion in with some gravy of kindness, it will just be glossed over.
For the church, it's a lot about the tone, not necessarily what is said. And Peter Bleakley, for instance, who I've had on the Mormon News Roundup, he runs the Mormon Civil War a couple of times. He still goes to church every single Sunday. He didn't want to be excommunicated either, but he said that in the disciplinary council or membership council with the stake president, that they said, it's not really about what you said. It's just that you have a harsh tone. And for the church, you have to have that sweet primary voice in what you say. And that's what you get with Faith Matters. These people also, some of them don't even, they deny the historicity of the Book of Mormon, and a lot of them are incredibly nuanced, but because they haven't labeled themselves as a critic, then they get to go under the radar. And in fact, they collect speaking fees for these engagements, and they're considered Mormon royalty. So yeah, these Faith Matters conferences are a real head scratcher when you compare that with the treatment that Nemo the Mormon got.
Oh, so true. So true. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And here we have Natasha Helfer. There was a vigil for Nemo the Mormon out there, and she says it was an honor to be able to witness the unfortunate emotional brutality of another one of our members being called into a disciplinary council by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The church cannot tolerate accurate criticism. In the meantime, it's members who pay the price on any side of the aisle. I always hope for better in the future. Rene, can the church handle even reasonable criticism of its actions? Or if you make a criticism against the church, are you going to be silenced like Nemo the Mormon appears to be?
Yeah, you will be. And the scary thing is, D-Vase, because we're in a political season, there's a lot of information out there right now about the authoritarian dictator type of regime. And one of the things that you'll see in strongmen dictators is the inability to criticize. It's absolutely not allowed. And so when I see this kind of behavior, it just kind of makes me sit back and go, this might be scarier than we think.
Yes, there's a lot of authoritarian tendencies that are in the Quorum of the 15. They act a lot like some of those other dictators that we've seen throughout the world, like Xi Jinping, where he puts this kibosh on any type of criticism. And that's exactly what we see here. And what we saw also is that he said that he's probably going to be excommunicated here. And in fact, there was an online vigil. There was a talk about it. And this is a couple of memes that came out of it too. There was kind of a Last Supper here where he said, this is the last time that I'm going to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, most likely. And there he is, taking wine or breaking communion with his fellow British Avengers and other people. Is this just to be expected? Because the church, we know that the church isn't honest and not transparent, and they've never really pretended to be. They've never really said that they're going to be a place where there's going to be a fair market of ideas and where you can have a back and forth. Therefore, is he justified in what he's doing, or is criticism against him I'm going to ask kind of a tough question. Is Nemo making himself out to be a martyr unnecessarily?
I think probably there's mixed feelings about that. I think I've heard a lot of people say, well, what did he expect? Or why is he so surprised this is happening? And I think because of things like Faith Matters, where you have people on a stage criticizing doctrine or saying, yes, my bishop said these very misogynist things to me, on a stage with members watching, when they can get away with that, it makes you think that the church is moving progressively. But then you go back to this. And I think one of the other things that when we talk about transparency is the fact that they wouldn't give him any information before he went into the room. And he was absolutely gobsmacked by some private correspondence that they had received. And he didn't even know that was coming. And I think that was more deflating for him than even the whole excommunication process, is that people had betrayed him.
Yeah, people who value honesty and transparency would give you your charges ahead of time. We know that the church definitely does not honor that in any way, shape, or form. That's absolutely to be true. Now, for those of you out there, we release new episodes of the Mormon News Roundup every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let us know your thoughts about Nemo the Mormon and his potential excommunication, which appears to be all but a done deal, even though it isn't official. Leave us a thought in the comments below, and we'd be very grateful for that. Now, in your neck of the woods here, I saw this as a very interesting piece here. I know that you live in Arizona here, and you were talking about politics here. And Arizona is really a battleground state in the upcoming election. Not only is Kamala Harris going for the Mormon vote, but Donald Trump is courting the Mormons too in Arizona. What's happening there in Arizona with regards to the politics and Mormon vote in your state here, Rene?
It's very interesting. I read this article by Phil Boss, and I thought it was a little bit biased when he talked about as a Mormon, how they vote, they're not monolithic, yada, yada, yada. But then he said, but they're not going to vote for those left liberals, those communists, those socialists. And I was like, wait, how did this article turn so drastically? But I am surprised, but Carrie Lake is a big person and she's getting, her opponent is doing very well. I think people are tired of the fake news, stolen election rhetoric. And I think there is a little bit of fatigue, political fatigue. And I think they are maybe starting to say, let's just consider the other side a little bit.
Yeah, there definitely is. Now, from the article itself, it says Donald Trump is a turnoff to many LDS people who highly value tolerance. But how worried should Republicans be about losing the Mormon votes? And this is from the article itself. It says the move against Trump may be overstated. Mormons follow Christ's admonition to love your neighbor and forgive those who despise you. But as it turns out, the Christian gospel is a great coping mechanism in a hostile world. Latter-day Saints have flourished as a people and a culture. And for the second year in a row, U.S. News has named Utah as the best state in the country on the power of its economy, education, infrastructure, financial stability, crime, and corrections categories, in which it ranked in the top 10 among all states. Undoubtedly, as Mormons prosper, some will identify more with the educated classes that are drawn to the Democratic Party. Do you think that in the future that Mormonism will be less conservative and less willing to vote for Democrats? Or do you think that this is just a flash in the pan based on the fact that Donald Trump's persona is perhaps not as palatable to Latter-day Saints as Mitt Romney or John McCain?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. How much damage has he actually done to the Republican Party? And will people fall back? Is it one of those, we're going to vote for the lesser of two evils situations? Or is it a truly, I am a Republican or I am a Democrat through and through. That's where my blood flows. I don't know, but I thought his article was really funny because he mentioned the Pew Research that was done where the Mormon Church was the most disliked of all of the Christian religions. But then he said, but on the flip side, it found that Mormons are the most accepting of people not of their faith. And I was like, I don't know if that's true. I don't know what that research is.
I've read that similar article here that says that Latter-day Saints have a generally good impression of other faith traditions. They like Jews, they like Muslims, they like Protestants. They like everybody. They don't have a lot of bones to pick with anyone, and yet those feelings are not reciprocated. People have a great deal of distrust for Mormons in general. They only barely rank ahead of atheists, Satanists, and Scientologists. So, I mean, the I'm a Mormon campaign and the Homefront campaigns are the church of the PR departments trying to put out spin and show everybody that, hey, we're just a Christian faith, just like anybody else. We do a lot of good things, a lot of press releases about giving away millions of dollars to nonprofits and charities and things like that. But it has not moved the needle. Most people consider Mormons to be very strange and very foreign and other. In fact, some statistics have shown that 30% of people in the United States think that Mormons practice polygamy still today. So the church has a lot of PR work that still needs to be done. Any last thoughts on Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, politics, anything that's happening in Arizona, in your neck of the woods? Because it is one of the biggest battleground states out there right now.
Yeah, it really is. I know, that Governor Kelly was a possible vice president candidate and people were, voting for that. And so, yeah, there really is some change going on. It's going to be very interesting to watch this election for sure.
Yeah. Now I follow you on TikTok over there and you released this about Arizona as well. I just thought I'd like to play this particular clip that you put on. And if you want to follow you on TikTok, you're at Go Gray Dame. And you're talking about more about Arizona politics and what's happening out there in the neck of your woods, about the things that you value with regards to women's rights, child sexual abuse, and things of those nature. Let's play this and get your reaction.
In the state of Arizona, over 200 new laws went into effect, but I want to highlight 3 that I worked so hard on this last legislative session pertaining to those who commit sexual crimes. If you rape a child under the age of 12, you will now be sentenced to natural life in prison with no possibility of ever going out. You will now die in prison in the state of Arizona if you rape a child under the age of 12. And don't come at me with, we should have sentenced them to death, because that never would have happened in the state of Arizona. This is a huge step in the right direction, and natural life in prison is a type of death sentence. If you are a registered sex offender with parental rights, you must now notify your child's school of your sex offender status. No more of this only level 2 and level 3 in the district which you live. You will now have to notify your child's school. Lastly, the one that I've been working on for 3 years, it took 3 years to get this signed into law. And it's so personal to me for so many different reasons. But now in the state of Arizona, if you commit a dangerous crime against a child, you will be uploaded onto the DPS public registry. The reason that this is so important is because in Arizona, only a level 2 and a level 3 will show on the public registry, that neighborhood search you do. Keep in mind, it's a 19-question general risk assessment that determines someone's risk level. So now, regardless of what risk level you are, if you are convicted under 13705 and you commit a dangerous crime against a child, you will be uploaded onto the public registry, and that law is retroactive.
Yeah, some interesting changes taking place there in Arizona. And I know that children's well-being and combating CSA is something that's very important to you over there at Go Great Aim.
You know, the things that happened in Bisbee, Arizona, I think has been there's, you know how the news is, 15 minutes, you're on to a new subject. So that what happened in Arizona to that young family and those children that were sexually abused, and the fact that the church fought that and continued to say we did nothing wrong, it should not have been reported. And I love that this is the reaction. Well, we couldn't win that case, but maybe we can protect children in the future. And I've had a lot of people, since I posted that on TikTok, they've said, well, why 12 or children below the age of 12? I suppose, you know, when it comes to the law, there always has to be a division of some kind, a stipulation of some kind. And so it's great. It's the best we can do for right now. And I think it's amazing how absolutely direct it is. And hopefully other states will look at this and say, maybe that's something we should do.
So you look at this as a direct reaction to the AP sex abuse story with the Bisbee bishops, where 2 Mormon bishops were given information in a confessional setting for credible CSA against 2 children. And those Mormon bishops called church headquarters and were told not to report it to law enforcement. And the horrific crimes continued. You see this as Arizona's reaction to the Mormon church defending the bishops in this case. And you see that as a direct result?
I do, and I don't have anything to back that up, but it does seem to correlate very well. And I know that the children tried to sue the church because they didn't call authorities. So I think I'm assuming this is a reaction to that, but I don't have any data that verifies that.
Very interesting stuff. Okay, very interesting. Now, our next article here is the Gaddy lawsuit. And we had 2 lawsuits that took place this week. Very interesting stuff here. Joseph Smith and his Seer Stone and Book of Mormon translation come up in federal court hearing on tithing lawsuit. So at the 10th Circuit, the LDS lawyers push back against this fraud case, accusing plaintiffs of seeking a hearsay trial. So let me just, I know you were following this. Let's just read this to you and give you the basics of what's happening here. Federal judges began poking this week at the legal thickets surrounding accusations of fraud brought by former members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints over tithing. A 3-judge panel in the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals sitting in Denver heard arguments Monday and asked probing questions about a 2019 case brought on behalf of 3 former Latter-day Saints accusing church leaders of racketeering over the practice. Various judges are being asked to weigh the church's constitutional protections as a religion against the legal rights of ex-members who assert they were fraudulently misled, including about core questions such as how sacred scriptures got translated and how billions of dollars in donations were spent. So this is the so-called Gaddy lawsuit here, in which church members are saying that we weren't told the correct information about church history. We were deliberately misled, not as a matter of faith, but as a matter of fraud. How do you feel about the lawsuit that's taking place there in Denver with that 3-judge panel there, the Gaddy lawsuit?
It's fascinating to listen to. It was, I really appreciated the coverage of this because it's something that really, you got to keep right on top of it, because the back and forth between the lawyers, the judges, was absolutely amazing. The autonomy that the church is trying to claim of their freedom of religion, and then trying to divide a religion, a faith, a belief that can't be documented, can't be proven. And is that different than doctrine that is supposedly historically correct, that then members find out that it was historically not correct and it was fraudulent? It's going to be very interesting to watch this. And I know that they tried to bring the history of the Book of Mormon, the first vision, they tried to bring everything into it. And it's going to be interesting to see where this goes, because it isn't just a matter in a faith in God, Jesus Christ and his divinity. It isn't something like that. It's more on basis of facts that were given that they knew were not correct, which would seem like it's more fraudulent than just a faith.
Yeah, when I originally had read the documentation behind this, I really didn't think that they had much of a case because, there's a wide latitude for religions to have the First Amendment and to preach almost anything that is devoid of reason, data, or evidence. You can believe almost anything you want and try to talk other people into it. That's quite frankly what makes the United States great, is that you can believe anything that you want free of the government influence. But this is not what is happening in this case. The plaintiffs are saying that the church knew and deliberately hid different aspects of church history that have made it so that they gave tithing when they didn't know the full complete picture. It's not about emphasizing certain areas. It's about deliberate non-disclosure of items which are absolutely essential to anyone's faith or confidence in church leaders. And the arguing and going back and forth of the lawyers here is absolutely fascinating. I have a somewhat dim view of the potential of this particular case, but I thought that the arguments were absolutely fascinating. Do you think that this has any chance at all of succeeding?
Honestly, I don't think I know. After listening to the lawyers, I don't know where this is going to go. And I know that a lot of people have compared it to like, well, how can you say that the church has autonomy and yet you outlawed polygamy? And that was brought up by some of the people that are discussing it on the website. But they said, you as a church in your religion, you can believe in something, but you can't necessarily act on it, because Joseph Smith tried to use that amendment to justify polygamy. Well, that's our religious beliefs. And, then you go into other things like human sacrifice or even the use of drugs and rituals, where the government comes out and says, you can believe that, you just can't practice it. So it's different. This is a very different and unique lawsuit. It's going to be interesting to watch.
I can't wait to watch it. And Julia over there at Analyzing Mormonism gave an interesting sum up here, because the judges asked the one of the lawyers, and they said, well, is there any limit at all to what the church can tell its parishioners? In other words, could they deliberately deceive people or deliberately hide people or deliberately withhold vital information? Is there any limit at all to what the church can teach or preach or emphasize? And the answer is very revealing here. And Julia over there Analyzing Mormonism gives a very interesting take about that particular interaction.
So today we heard the oral arguments for Laura Gaddy, Lyle Smith, and Leanne Harris versus the Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In the arguments, the church is represented by attorney David J. Jordan. And in the arguments, Mr. Jordan said something very interesting. I'm going to play the clip in full and then talk about the part that upsets me.
What they're asking the court to prescribe is the manner in which the church teaches its doctrine. What things you should emphasize, what things you should particularly point out to members of the church or to prospective members of the church when you're teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ to them and the history of the church. And to say, well, what you need to do as a church, what courts are telling you you must do as a church, is put particular emphasis on the method by which the Book of Mormon was translated. And any disputes about that or anything that hasn't been given emphasis in the past, that is an intrusion on a deeply rooted religious matter.
Is there any limit to that principle, which is to say, can a church conceal anything, even if it thinks, wow, we're going to lose half our membership on this, we better put it in a vault somewhere? Is there any limit on what a church can conceal and not be subject to civil recall?
I think there is no limit at all on what a church is required to teach or not teach, emphasize or not emphasize. I think that would be a deep intrusion into what you described as deep religious waters.
So basically, Mr. Jordan is saying that there should be no limit on what the church chooses to teach and what they choose not to teach. In other words, they get to decide what parts of their history they get to hide. In this argument, they chose only one topic, because as attorney Kay Birmingham says, there are so many. They pointed out that the church hid the fact that Joseph Smith used a brownstone and a hat in order to translate the Book of Mormon. Again, the church's main argument is that it should be up to them what they choose not to teach to their own members about their own history. The church is absolutely pushing against informed consent.
There seems to be the argument here from this lawyer that says that the church is absolutely above all moral responsibility whatsoever to inform its parishioners of any problematic aspects of church history. They can cover up anything that they want. They can tell you something that's completely untrue as well. There's just no limits here to what the church is arguing with regards to being honest. That's maybe technically, I'm not a lawyer, that may be legally right, but it seems morally reprehensible.
It so is, and I always go back to this, but when we're talking about syntax and vernaculars and the word emphasis, we can emphasize things or we may not emphasize things. I can't help but go back to Bill Clinton's "it depends on what is," or thinking back on some of the other organizations where the leaders have been, arrested and put in prison for the rest of their lives. And, could Keith Raniere from NXIVM say, well, I don't necessarily emphasize branding the women as I did, because that really isn't important to what we were teaching our people as far as, improving their systems of learning. I didn't emphasize that. I mean, how far are we going to take this word emphasize to, well, we didn't emphasize the murder. We just looked at it differently. I mean, it could go in so many different directions. It's amazing.
Yeah, it certainly is. That Bill Clinton quote, Bill Clinton and the meaning of is. It depends on what the meaning of the word is. And it's very ironic here. And Kolch did a interesting mashup of the church's lawyer mixed with M. Russell Ballard, which I find to be very amusing. Let me play that for you.
I think there is no limit at all on what a church is required to teach or not teach, emphasize or not emphasize. I think that would be a deep intrusion into what you described as deep religious water.
This idea that the church is hiding something, which we would have to say as two apostles who have covered the world and know the history of the church and know the integrity of the first presidency and the Quorum of the 12 from the beginning of time. There has been no attempt on the part in any way of the church leaders trying to hide anything from anybody. So just trust us. We're as transparent as we know how to be in telling the truth.
So we have the church's lawyer here, Rene, saying that we can hide anything that we want. We can tell you the truth or not. We can do anything that we want because we're a religion and we have the First Amendment. And then you have apostles like Dallin Oaks and Russell Ballard who say, just trust us. We're as transparent as we know how to be. We've traveled the world and we'll never hide anything from you. What are we supposed to take from the entire Gaddy lawsuit and the church's doublespeak in this particular case?
Well, I just can't help to relate it to a lot of people have kind of associated aspects of the Mormon church to an abusive spouse. And I just think if you got on their phone and you saw some text from a mistress or, your husband was supposedly working late last night, but all of a sudden you see this text that says, oh, it was so great being with you last night, baby. And you approach, you go to your husband, you say, what is this? He says, I just don't emphasize what I do outside of my working hours. We're just not going to look at that. I did not do anything bad and you need to trust me. Because, what I do outside of my working hours, I don't emphasize that. And I'm as transparent as I possibly can be, honey. So just look the other way. I mean, comparing to real life situations, anybody with any kind of common sense would go, yeah, that doesn't work. I can't take that.
Yeah, the abusive spouse comparison is very apt here because Russell Ballard himself said that if you leave the church, that you'll be destitute, that you'll have no meaning in your life, that you'll be sad, that you'll be miserable. That's the same type of thing that an abusive spouse will tell you is that without me, you will have no meaning. Without me, you're going to be miserable. And it's those type of manipulative sentiments that are very important. In fact, the church, teaches that if you leave the church, that in the next life, you will be burned by eternal fire. So there's a lot of abusive spouse metaphors that fit very well in the church's wheel well as a high demand religion.
Exactly.
And there's another, this isn't the only lawsuit here this week. This was an incredible week here. The Ninth Circuit judge in the James Huntsman lawsuit peppers attorneys with questions on both sides of Huntsman's tithing lawsuit. I think most of all of the questions evidence the deep concern that the church had in having courts interfere with the autonomy of churches and their doctrines of faith. So in this particular lawsuit here, James Huntsman said that he gave the church tithing under the auspice that it would be used to alleviate human suffering. And it turns out that it wasn't. Most of it was used for the church's commercial purposes, including the building of a luxury mall and the bailing out of an insurance company. And he's amended his lawsuit to talk about how the church has done almost nothing charitable with his particular donation, which I believe is somewhere around the $3 to $4 million range. And he's seeking that back. And he's saying that the church solicited these donations under fraudulent circumstances. I was told that I would give money to the church and that it would be used to help others. It wasn't. It was used for bailing out of an insurance company and building of a luxury mall. That's not what I signed up for. And this has now, under the full judge panel here, just been reheard this particular week. And I know that you were following this carefully as well. How do you feel about James Huntsman's case about getting his tithing back?
This was really interesting because of the 11 judges, I think, that were sitting there, the questions that they asked. It was absolutely fascinating. I thought that James Huntsman's lawyer was he did a really great job. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm sad that it's going to take so long for now. They've made their presentation. It's going to take a long time for them to decide where it's going to go. I don't know. I don't know if I have a feeling where this is going to go, because I know that if this goes through, the floodgates will be open. And I'm sure the church is terrified that this is going to, open up their lots of class action suits will be going against people wanting their tithing back. It's going to set a precedence. And I know that there's some fear in that. I would be afraid as well. But it's going to be interesting to watch. I don't feel really good that it's going to make it all the way through. But I think he's got a good case. And I do think even if it doesn't go through, it's maybe made some people think that we need to make some changes.
We've already seen a number of copycat lawsuits that are mirroring what James Huntsman did, because part of his appeal was upheld at the district level already. That's opened up the floodgate for at least 9 copycat lawsuits and perhaps more of people saying that I, just like James Huntsman, gave my donations to the church, and I was told that they would be used to help other people, both over the pulpit, not only at the local level, but at the general conference level, at the president of the church level, and in church manuals and official publications. And it turns out that almost none of it was. And so we've already seen copycat lawsuits. You're right. This is going to open an absolute floodgate. Now, the Gaddy lawsuit, in my opinion, has limited ability to win. I just don't see it happening. I could be wrong about that. But the James Huntsman, I do see that as possibly going to the Supreme Court. And one of the issues, of course, that we have with the current Supreme Court is that it is a Trump-appointed Supreme Court, very conservative, with a number of religious parishioners on it. Alito, I think, is Catholic. Amy Coney Barrett is also a practicing Catholic. These are people who have a very dim view of, that have a very significant view of religions having autonomy over people. And if James Huntsman does get to the Supreme Court, it probably is not going to get through this very conservative Supreme Court. So his timing, unfortunately, may not be very good here. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. Maybe because it's going to take a while for this group of judges to decide if we can go to trial with the jury. Maybe that will get past the election. Maybe there'll be some differences. I don't know, but I totally agree with you. This Supreme Court is, I wouldn't hold out too much hope. Timing, as you say.
Yeah, the timing is not good for James Huntsman in particular on this one. Let's read from the actual article itself, because this is one of the most important news articles of the week. A panel of 11 judges should dismiss James Huntsman's lawsuit seeking the return of $5 million in tithing he donated to the Mormon Church for 2 reasons. This is the church's article, by the way. The church's attorney said Wednesday before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in San Francisco. So here's the church's argument here. We've heard James Huntsman's. Now let's hear the church's side. First, the church did not represent how it paid for the City Creek Center project in downtown Salt Lake City. And second, the courts should not be involved in religious doctrine decisions such as how tithing is used. And this was from Paul Clement, who served as Solicitor General of the United States during the George W. Bush administration. So the church is really going to a heavy hitter here. The Solicitor General, the church it has very, very deep pockets, and they're willing to use them for these tithing lawsuits in particular. How do you feel about the church's claim, number one, that it did not misrepresent how it was going to be building the City Creek Mall back in the 2005 timeframe? How do you feel about the church's argument here?
It's going to be interesting to watch, because I remember as an active believing Mormon writing on Facebook that I was so proud that I gave 10% of my income because of all the beautiful humanitarian projects that my church was taking part in. And that's what I see when I hear people respond to different posts about how the church is misusing their funds. People will say, they gave over $1 billion. And when you are trying to work with believers, they think City Creek is the best thing ever. It's right across the street from Temple Square. Let's make it beautiful. They don't care. So it really is going to be interesting to see how far this goes.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how far it goes. Now, here's a picture here that I have of the actual argument here. It says James Huntsman tithing case against the LDS Church takes a legal thrashing before federal judges. Yeah, here is that full panel that you were talking about, Rene, with those 11 judges. That seems very intimidating for me, but it says this is the argument here from James Huntsman lawyers. It says it doesn't matter that the concept of donation may be cloaked in religion, his lawyer counters. That's not a way to get away with fraud.
Yeah.
So it's really the City Creek Mall here is the linchpin. In particular, President Hinckley in 2003 made several statements, and so did the presiding bishopric and others, including in General Conference, which said that not one penny of tithing would be used for the construction of the $1.4 billion City Creek Mall renovation. But according to David Nielsen and many other available information, it appears that at least the interest on tithing was used at a minimum for the City Creek Mall, and maybe tithing in general as well. So the church can do almost anything with tithing donations, including enriching itself, including they could just, they could burn it, they could throw it in the ocean. You can do almost anything with tithing donations, except you can't say, give your donation and we're not going to do this with it. And then you go ahead and do that with it. That's where the fraud is coming in on the James Huntsman side. What's your last thoughts here on James Huntsman's lawsuit and its potential future?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've heard a lot of people compare it to, let's say, if there was a fundraiser that said, we're raising money for this family, they lost their home in a fire. Please donate. We're going to be giving all of this money to the family. And then the organization takes the money and they all go to Acapulco. And so I've heard people compare it to that. Poor President Hinckley. I mean, I'm sure he didn't really understand what he was saying. But, as the former president of a nonprofit, I know that people could make donations, but they couldn't tell me what to do with those donations. But I also couldn't take those donations and go to Acapulco. So there are rules around what you can do with funds that have been advertised fraudulently. So, interesting.
Hinckley was the former president of the Deseret Management Corporation. He has a significant business acumen. He had been in the church circles for 40 years. And of course, the church has many lawyers. He should have known better. See, if Gordon Hinckley or these other people hadn't said one word about it, James Huntsman would have no case whatsoever, because his entire case hinges around those City Creek statements in particular. So, Hinckley, obviously, he messed up. And because the church didn't make any statements about the beneficial life, that part of the lawsuit was thrown out. Wow. So if they had kept their mouth shut about the entire City Creek, it wouldn't have had such an issue. But the problem is that everyone at the time was saying, you know what? We see the church building this incredibly expensive real estate development that's got to be worth billions of dollars. How do I know that my tithing isn't being used for that? So now they're talking out of both sides of their mouth and made a series of highly disingenuous statements. And it has finally gotten up to that appeals court level with James Huntsman in the 10th Circuit. How this is going to be resolved is going to be not only affecting the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but all religions in general. Many other people have filed amicus briefs on behalf of this, of saying, we don't want this case to be adjudicated in James Huntsman's favor, because it is going to affect every religion, not only in the United States, but maybe the world. This is one reason that James Huntsman, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful ex-Mormons in the world. It's going to be a fascinating case. Any last thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I agree with that, because I couldn't help but think of, I can't remember his name, I don't know why, but the gentleman that's the head of an evangelical church, and he's got his private jets, and he was interviewed and they were asking him about his private jets, and he was like, you can't tell me what to do, and I live in this beautiful mansion because God wants me to live here. And I'm sure those are the people that are filing those amicus briefs.
Yeah, they definitely are. Who is that crazy pastor there with the COVID-19 song?
Yeah.
Hold it. I should know this. Hold on. I got to look this up here. COVID-19 song remix. I'm just going to look it up on the fly. I can always edit this. Kenneth Copeland.
Yes.
Kenneth Copeland.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so a couple of last articles to take us out of here. We got two last articles here that I think are pretty interesting. Number one, the LDS Church has silenced and punished women who don't keep sweet and protect LDS men as they do as they're told by church leaders. This woman was threatened with a disciplinary council for apostasy and had her temple recommend taken away for speaking to friends about her divorce. Let's check this out here from Jen over there at Jen Next Door on Twitter, who follows the space very carefully. This is absolutely shocking.
Former member of the LDS Church says her stake president disciplined her because she, quote, talked too much.
Chris Jones with the exclusive interview for us tonight. And Chris, Tiercy Hadlock says she went to her church leader for comfort.
Yeah, and she says she was getting anything but. She says that her life was falling apart, and the advice that she was getting from her church leaders was growing more and more alarming. So kind of on a whim, she pulled out her cell phone during two of the meetings and began recording. And this is what she heard.
Oh, that hurt. It cut like a knife.
For faithful Mormon Tiercy Hadlock, this following sentence from her stake president crushed her.
To not follow counsel and direction from your priesthood leaders. There's a name for that. That's called apostasy.
To me, it was akin to like the worst thing that you could be called.
An apostate, not for an affair or for shunning the church, but for not being quiet about her painful divorce.
I talked to my closest friends about it a lot because it was the way that I processed things.
In addition to being labeled an apostate, the stake president had even more discipline for her.
We took your temple recommend away because you emphatically said you would not stop talking about this with other people.
An apostate, revoked temple recommend. All this after Hadlock says her ex-husband and a woman in the ward were tangled in an emotional affair. But Hadlock says neither of them received any punishment.
They get to do all of that and there's no consequence for their behavior. And because I am hurt and struggling and trying to process it, I get my recommend taken away.
And then in a later meeting, after she continued to talk about her divorce, the stake president raised the stakes again.
I would like you to reevaluate how you really feel about this. And if you can't, Tiercy, we're going to convene a disciplinary council.
These recordings happened last year, but Hadlock says she had to speak out now because of the Me Too movement, the LDS Church's support of a bill outlawing recordings like hers, and news that LDS bishops told the ex-wives of Rob Porter not to leave him after he allegedly beat them.
I needed to speak my piece. I needed to speak my truth. This is the time to share it and hopefully get other people.
It's amazing who gets a disciplinary council in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and those who don't. If you speak the truth like Nemo, I haven't heard him say one thing that has been factually in error. You're criticizing the church and you're going to get your temple recommend removed. And this woman is saying that sure, her temple recommend was also revoked for, once again, not telling lies or not some type of a personal apostasy, but just mentioning the fact that it appears that her husband has been very duplicitous. You know, these church stories, unfortunately, they're just so common every week. We could highlight like a dozen of them if we had time.
Yeah, I can personally tell you a story that, you know, when the one of the places that we lived formerly, where there was a gentleman that kind of did the same thing, destroyed his family. And the bishop told the ward, you need to stop talking about this. This man is going to go through the repentance process. And his wife died of cancer. And he just recently has been arrested for sexually molesting patients in his office. So it's kind of like there's so many, as you mentioned, D-Vase, there are so many stories like this where nothing happens to the men and the women are punished for speaking out. It's the patriarchy. It's scary. A hierarchical system. It's a scary protective system.
Yeah, it's men, because there's no woman in the church who has the final decision for absolutely anything. Men really feel like they have the priesthood authority, and there's a culture in the church of men protecting other men from wrongdoing, whether it's alleged or in actuality. In some ways, it doesn't really even matter because it seems like it's so hard to get a fair shake in the church at these disciplinary councils. And we saw the Elder Oaks a couple of weeks ago released a new guidance to the local area authorities and stake presidents and bishops that says that we need to start ramping up more disciplinary councils. We need to revoke, we need to hold more of them. And when we do hold them, we need to have the full membership withdrawal. It's a very regressive mindset. And, they're saying that President Nelson is, mentally, he's over 100 years old now, and maybe he isn't calling all of the shots. And Dallin Oaks instead is the one who maybe is pushing these things forward. And we know how he feels about so many different issues. He's very, very hardliner. Maybe we're starting to see these things come out, and these disciplinary councils are going to become much more common, which leaves a wake of destruction behind for, you can tell that this woman was very broken up about it. Nemo the Mormon was also very emotional about it. And if they ever come for my membership council, I'm sure that I will also have similar sentiments. It all is very caveman-esque, and it's really unfortunate the way that the church operates.
Yeah, it's violent. It really is violent, and it's soul crushing. And it's one of the reasons I always say, I resigned my membership because I didn't want to give these men authority over my life. And that's the way I handled it. But for others, it's devastating.
Okay, now the church has big ambitions throughout the world. We know that for a certainty here, and they are trying to annex a huge chunk of Orlando. This is what I expect an article here, Rene, from like a country like, I don't know, like Russia is trying to annex Ukraine. Instead, the Mormon church that is trying to expand and double its influence in Orlando. This is absolutely crazy here because the church has a huge citrus farm and also a cattle ranch that's adjoining to Orlando of something like, I think it's around 100,000 acres. And they're trying to add more to it, which is going to cause a great deal of consternation. It's not just about the temples that the church tries to force through. It's also about its real estate portfolio, which is absolutely vast here. And the activists are up in arms in I believe that's Orange County, Florida, about what the church is trying to do here. Let's see what's going on there.
Protests tonight outside Orlando City Hall over how to handle growth in what could be the next big boomtown area of Central Florida. It's all over an enormous empty area, about 10 times the size of Walt Disney World. The Deseret Ranch stretches through Orange, Osceola, and Brevard counties. It's been owned for more than 7 decades by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the Mormons, they want Orlando to annex about 52,000 acres of the ranch for development. That area alone is twice as big as Disney, but they're slowly weighing long-term plans for all 300,000 acres owned by the church. News 6's Treasure Robert shows us why the protesters want a no vote.
You guys do a good job, but you're not getting it right. You need to listen to the people. Let us vote.
Concerned taxpayers Monday took their fight to the Orlando City Council chambers.
If Deseret Ranch's true effort was to actually conserve the land, they would not be doing this in the first place.
They're pushing back against an effort by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to annex 52,000 acres of its Deseret Ranch property to the city of Orlando. Their land is highlighted in red. It sits between the Orlando International Airport and the Space Coast. The Mormon Church wants to annex the portion that falls under the jurisdiction of unincorporated Orange County.
With the full development plan, what percentage of the 52,000 acres will remain environmentally protected?
The short answer to your question is there's no answer to your question because we're not asking for anything other than to be part of the city rather than part of the county.
That's Gary Hunter, the attorney representing the landowners. He says there is no development plan, adding they are happy to work with city staff to create one in the future.
If you own a piece of property, you have a large say in what you get to do with that property.
Most commissioners are leaning toward approving the proposal.
If they're willing to follow our rules and regs, I don't see why the government should step in and tell them they can't.
But just one said no.
I don't believe it is Orlando's responsibility to clean up someone else's mess.
Kelly Simrad, an activist, said citizens' concerns are not being validated.
It's irresponsible overdevelopment and it should be stopped. It should not be promoted. And what this council did today is very disappointing.
In November, county voters can weigh in on 2 ballot amendments that would establish a rural boundary. Activist Lee Perry believes that's why the city is trying to quickly push this annexation through.
We, the people, want to have the ability to vote. This is our democratic process.
In Orlando, Treasure Roberts, Getting Results, News 6.
As Treasure mentioned, the Mormons want Orlando to act before Orange County voters go to the polls. On the ballot, 2 amendments to the county charter One would make it much harder for cities like Orlando to annex unincorporated land. The other would establish rural boundaries. It would ban large developments in those areas without a majority +1 commission vote. For a guide to those amendments and all of the key races and issues on the ballot throughout Central Florida.
I swear I'm not cherry picking these articles, Rene, but wherever the church goes, there's just a massive amount of controversy that follows. It seems like getting along with its neighbors is increasingly hard for this provincial dogmatic theocracy.
Yeah, I think they should take a clip from the Fairview, Texas debates that are going on right now and show that on the news in Florida, just to let those people know how far their voice is going to be heard. It's like, we don't care. We don't care. And I love, my favorite thing, Dives, was when the newscaster called it the Mormon Church, because I love watching these people just throw their 2-year-old tantrum. You can't call it that. Our prophet said you can't call it that anymore. And everybody else in the world's going, oh, yeah, we don't care. I'm not saying that big long name. It's like, so that was, it reminded me of the article we started this podcast talking about, that article where he was saying how, they look at the research showed that most people don't like the Mormon people, but the Mormon people love everybody unless we want your land. And then we're going to take it. But we love you. It reminds me of the King George in Hamilton, we'll be back. We love you, but we may have to kill you. So it's just interesting.
Well, the church is playing nice right now because it looks like they're getting the green light. But at the moment, as we've seen from these other temple controversies, if these city councils or commissioners or county people, if they are signaling a no, then what the church typically does in this, instead of trying to resolve things amicably, the church will threaten to sue these towns into oblivion. And that is what causes a lot of backlash in these particular communities. I mean, 50,000 acres is a tremendous amount of land here that the church is trying to gobble up for itself, in addition to the 100,000 acres that it already has in the citrus farm and the desert ranches. By the way, those ranches and farms are used for commercial purposes to enrich the bottom line, and oftentimes they're purchased or they are financed or they are leased in a way that reduces the church's total amount of property taxes that it has to pay in these particular areas. Now, I don't know if the Deseret Ranch pays full property taxes. I'm not privy to that, but if you're annexing an additional 50,000 acres, that could potentially put onto those particular communities additional property values and taxes if the church is tax exempt, where those citizens have to pay more because of Mormon Incorporated. And naturally, that also causes a great deal of consternation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really does go back to the public services and the things that avoiding taxes are like, well, how nice for you. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch.
And this is one reason that this podcast exists, is because the church doesn't cover any of those in the church news and KSL and the Deseret News and any of its media empire. It owns Bonneville Communication with several dozen radio stations, and they never talk about any of this stuff. And this is one reason that I think that the Mormon News Roundup fills a necessary gap. And this is our last article of the week here, which we saw a couple of weeks ago that the church spent $300 million on a farm in Queensland, Australia. Just a stunning sum here that translates to 26,000 HA. That's some New Zealand currency. I apologize, I don't know what that is, but it's around $300 million here. And this is a shocking price that the church paid. This is a huge sum of money. Typically, the church, we know, is the number one holder of real estate in the United States by total valuation and second by acreage, but we don't always get to see what they're doing internationally. And this was just brought out in Queensland just a little while ago, that there's a huge farm there. Let me read this to you and get your reaction once again of the church's real estate empire here. The Mormon Church is paying for Aussie sheep stations with an eye-watering sum. It paid for 26,000 hectares, set to trigger the floodgates as more family farms go up for sale. Oh, I see. That's hectares, not total amount of money. Okay, I got it. Sorry. Let's keep going. The Utah-based church, whose for-profit investment arm alone is estimated at $200 billion, is the funding powerhouse behind its Australian business, Alkira Farms 300 million foundation entry into prime Queensland cotton country. Australian farming families with decades on the land are among those listing land holdings for sale, as the strong US dollar and lower prices here make local agricultural, real estate, and other ventures very shiny, with the latest Australian Treasury figures showing American investors dominating approved investment proposals in both numbers and value, up to $1 billion worth of foreign investments, and the church is right there in the middle of it. The church's long-term goal here, let's not disabuse ourselves here. This is not some small provincial dogmatic theocracy which just keeps to itself. The end state of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is to fulfill that vision that King Nebuchadnezzar had of a stone rolling forth, filling all the earth and smashing all nations. And one way that it intends to do that is by annexing tens of thousands of acres and by buying $300 million farms. There's no other church that I'm aware of, Rene, that engages in these very corporate and legalistic practices other than the Mormon Church.
Yeah, and you can't help but ask yourself the support that the members of the church have for these kind of purchases, that there isn't some kind of united order that they're thinking. They're thinking that it's the end of the days, it's the last days, Jesus is coming, we're getting ready for the second coming. And if you are a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you will be able to live on this property. The church will feed you, they'll clothe you, because we've got sheep, we've got cattle, we've got oranges, and we will all live in blissful harmony in the united order by the church's investments that they made back in the 2000s. And I just can't help but think there is not a mindset for how Jesus is going to run the world when he comes. And I didn't know that Jesus had investments. I didn't know that he was in with Microsoft and Apple, but evidently he is. I don't know.
It's very ironic. That much is for sure. That does take us to our last segment here of Rene, which is the Mormon News Roundup joke of the week. And I believe that you have that for us.
I do, sir. A rabbi walked into a barber shop and asked the barber for a haircut. After finishing up, the rabbi asked how much, and the barber replied, "This one's on me. I couldn't possibly charge a man of God." The next day, the barber arrived to his shop with a dozen fresh-made bagels waiting for him near his door. The next week, a priest walks in to receive a haircut. The barber, noticing his collar, told the priest, "Because you're a man of God, this one's on the house." The next day, the barber arrived at his shop with a dozen roses lying nicely on his shop steps. The following week, 2 LDS missionaries arrived at the shop to get their haircut. Once again, when they were about to pay, the barber responded, "You're doing God's work. I cannot possibly charge you anything." The next day, the barber arrived to his shop to find a dozen missionaries waiting on the doorstep.
I do like that joke quite a bit here. And my wife actually cuts all of my hair, my kids' hair, all because when you have 4 kids and you have a husband, it gets kind of expensive. And she occasionally cuts the missionaries' hair as well. And it's amazing. Once she cuts one of them, the word gets out and she starts getting the text messages and, she tries to help them out. So that's fun.
Yeah. Now, because my 92-year-old mother, who joined the church in the 60s, still has the mentality that if you have someone in the ward that is an electrician or a plumber or does taxes, that they will do all of that work for you for free, because that's what they did in the 60s. And I keep saying, "Mom, you got to pay for it nowadays." She's like, "No, my home teacher came over and helped us rewire our house for free."
It always helps. Always helps if your home teacher is a handyman. There's no doubt about that.
Exactly.
Now, what projects are you working on? How can people get in touch with you? You got the She Became Visible channel there. You added Lila Tuller as your occasional co-host. What's going on over there?
Yep. I'm primarily on YouTube nowadays. I am working on getting everything transferred into a podcast, but with YouTube, you can listen to it. You don't need to visually, watch it. So, but I am trying to get back to transferring it into a podcast format, but primarily I'm on YouTube as She Became Visible 513. And I'm trying to do more solo things. My schedule is just crazy, and having to try to mix my schedule with a co-host schedule is crazy. So I'm doing more single things. But actually, tomorrow I'm going to be interviewing Jane from 21st Century Saints in Scotland. And so that's going to be great. And I really do emphasize women and their journeys and their autonomy and becoming more visible. That's primarily what I like to talk about.
Yeah, very great episodes. I've watched so many of them. Really, really good stuff. Now, the items that I'm working on, just want to cover a couple of those as well. Tomorrow night, we have another episode of the Mormon Movie Reviews, which is every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this time, we're going to be watching Where No Flag Burns. This is a very important, officially produced church video that talks about how BYU never went through the social chaos that a lot of other universities went through in the 1960s. They didn't have any protests. They didn't have any civil rights. They didn't ask for, gay rights or women's rights or anything like that. And the reason for that is because those type of protests would have been squelched like a bug. And it puts forth a very shiny version of Mormonism that was in the 1960s. This is a really important church film. We're going to do a full watch party on it, 40 minutes long. Also, the next day after that, we're going to talk about how my old co-host on the Mormon News Roundup, his name was Al. His father is a very prominent LDS Church former general authority, and he was married to his wife. Al's father, my old podcasting host, was married to his Mormon wife and was a very prominent general authority for 50 years. She died, and within 17 days, he was remarried to another woman. It's an absolutely insane episode here. And the allegation from Al, my old co-hosting partner, is that he did not give her end of life treatment, that she could have been saved if they had done the proper medical treatments, and that he let her slip away so that he could marry another woman in short order. It's incredibly shocking. And this is one reason that Al is no longer podcasting, is that this ripped his life apart, and it's absolutely tragic. This is a not to be missed episode. I'd like to thank our patrons and YouTube subscribers out there. Really appreciate your efforts in this podcast. That's Garrick, SP Sarah, Melissa, Mark, Emerica, I'm not sure, Badass, Peacemaker, The Cat Lady, Dave Sommers, David, Blaine, Anthony, Brent, Colette, Michael, Eric, Sophronia, Carol, Andrea Orson, The Terror in the Chair, Elizabeth, and RWM. Really appreciate all of your support to the Mormon News Roundup, and especially to you, Rene. Thanks so much for coming onto the Mormon News Roundup. I greatly appreciate it.
It was such a pleasure. And I love co-hosting with you. You are so brilliant, and I love your format.
Oh, tell me so much more about that. I really appreciate that. Behind me, we have the She Became Visible backdrop there. I'm a subscriber to your channel, and I follow you, as you can see, on TikTok and in your social media platforms. Big fan of Lila Tuller as well. You guys put out a lot of great content, and it helps those of us with a Y chromosome understand what it is that we're missing. I want to give a shout out to Weird Alma on bandcamp.com for this episode's music. Always think celestial, and remember.
No unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan. Satan.
That's so great. Thanks so much.
Tagline of the show, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes. You'll have to show that to me again. I can't remember.
And no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
There we go. Perfect. Yes.
If you wouldn't mind saying it, if you could just say it, I'd appreciate it. Okay, I am live. I am back with you with the after show. If you want to join me in the studio, you can follow the link that's scrolling along the bottom here and the after show. I am willing to take any and all haters. No issues whatsoever. Let me get that scrolling. Let me get that rolling along. I have a couple things that we could go through. If you're still with me, then either you really like this program, and I do appreciate that, or you may need to get a life. Not sure which one. I'm just going to show a couple of things here that I released this last week, and one of which is that I'm trying to come after Culture here and the see if I can release a couple of parody videos. And this one, this is my first attempt at it. And I only got a couple hundred views, but I still think it's really good here. And it's from the Sons of Provo, which is my favorite Mormon comedy movie, released in 2000, starring Kirby Haywood and Will Swenson. A fantastic gem here. And I put myself into the video here, and it's called I Am the Mac Mormon Daddy, the diddlywhack Mac Mormon Daddy, the king of the Sons of Provo. And yes, folks, that's talent on loan from Kolob. Let's see this music video, and you tell me what you think about it.
Yo, what's up with the plunky piano? Give me a track. Yeah, that's it. That's a funky Paul Medina track. Take it, Will. I was born in the church just like my daddy was. Yo, I'm pioneer stock. My grandpa crossed the plains in the snow. I got my Eagle Scout at 12 with some assistance from my mom. I was home before 9:30 when I went to the prom. I love to sit in my pew and praise the Lord with a hymn. I'm hyperactive, yo. I even got the keys to the gym. I'm the tiddlywhack Mac Mormon daddy. Yo, my peeps all be conforming cause it's cool to be a Mormon. I'm the blackjack saint on a crack daddy, oh. I'm the tiddlywhack Mac Mormon daddy. And I'm spiritual. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. If a girlie wants to pursue me, do me, I say no, girl, not with you, me. I'll be waiting for my baby, dressed in white, not beige.
Not beige.
I believe that procreation, whoa, ain't a form of recreation. And my testimony keeps me warm at night. I'm a tiddlywhack Mac Mormon daddy. Yo, my peeps all be conforming cause it's cool to be a Mormon. I'm the blackjack saint on a crack daddy, oh. I'm a tiddlywhack Mac Mormon daddy. And I'm spiritual. Would all those in favor please make it manifest? Please make it manifest. Please make it manifest. Would all those in favor please make it manifest? I'm the tiddlywhack Mac Mormon daddy. Would all those in favor please make it manifest? Please make it manifest. Please make it manifest. Would all those in favor please make it manifest? I'm the tiddlywhack Mac Mormon daddy. People tell me that's funny to give 1/10 of all your money, but I do it no regret because of all the blessings that I get. I ain't stupid or lazy. I read my scriptures like crazy. I don't smoke or drink or cheat. I spent 2 years on my feet. That's more valuable to me than any prize. Preaching love and peace with other well-dressed guys. So many people let their spirits get persuaded by the devil, but I say get thee hence. I'm never gonna sink to your level. You're dark and evil. You want my face to be covered with mud. You're stupid. You're running back from this world. I'm a tiddlywhack Mac Mormon daddy. Yo, my peeps all be conforming cause it's cool to be a Mormon. I'm a blackjack saint or a crack daddy, oh.
What? No.
I'm the knick-knack paddywhack daddy. Yo, my peeps all be conforming cause it's fly to be a Mormon. I'm the fat knock-jack Mormon daddy. And I'm spiritual. The storms of hell might be a stormer, but I've saved me. I'm a Mormon. I'm tougher than George Foreman. I'm the bomb cause I'm a Mormon. Just don't call me Norman. I'm diddlywhack and I'm spiritual.
The music kind of started and I was not really sure what was happening, and then the rap started. And I just was really confused and I didn't really know what to do, and fortunately I had an agreement with my young women's leader that if I was ever in a place where things were not very good, that I could call her and she would come pick me up, so she's gonna be here soon. Rap just, it doesn't come from a very holy place, and I'm sorry, I should probably go.
I'll give you some direct. I love this. I love this video so much, even though nobody watched it, but that's okay. So the Sons of Provo, if you've never watched this movie, it really is super, super funny. You have to understand Provo Mormon culture to get the jokes behind it. And again, Kirby Hayward is still an active member of the church, by the way. He's still a good Mormon. Will Swenson has left the church, and I believe that is Teresh is his name. I forget his full name here. I believe he's left the church here, but I put myself into there because I am a son of Provo. There's just no getting around that. I spent about 15 years of my life in Utah Valley. Provo means a lot to me. Whenever I go back into Happy Valley, there's a special place in my heart for Provo, and there always will be. I taught at BYU for so long. You know, I worked either full-time or part-time for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for 24 years. And the majority of that time was in Provo. So Doug, you're out there. You lived in Provo. I live there. My mother still lives there. I look for every opportunity I can to get back to it. Let me just stop. I'm going to watch it again on low volume here where I put myself into the Sons of Provo, because my joke here is that I am the king of the Sons of Provo. And I really appreciate that. Coach says, leave the parody songs to me. Well, that's probably wise advice. I've got a lot to learn here. And I like the gangster feel with the piano here, because that's what I taught at BYU for so long, was piano. So it's got the electric piano at the beginning, which is really cool here. I kind of want to see what I really wanted to do. What I want to do with this video is that I want to get every Mormon, ex-Mormon podcaster out there and have them lip sync into their phone this video. And then I want to put a supercut together of every single Mormon, ex-Mormon podcaster out there, everybody out there, from Culch to Mormonish to Mormon Stories to Bill Reel to Radio Free Mormon to even Faithful Mormonism with the Murph, everybody. And I want everybody to sing it into their phone and then a supercut together with like 25 different podcasters. I think that would be a lot of fun. It'd be a hard thing to get together, but that's kind of my dream for this song, which I really, really enjoy. Let's see. You worked for the church. No wonder you are an apostate. Yes, I worked for the church for a long time, backyard professor. I drank the Kool-Aid very, 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 very deeply. Songs. Will Swinson is not, but I love watching his movies and plays. He's Neil Diamond on Broadway. He's had a very successful career, and he's a brilliant director, and he's an actor. He's a singer. He's a dancer. Will Swinson is an absolute gem. And Gene says, I proposed behind the Provo Temple on Valentine's Day 42 years ago. My friend, that temple is no longer there. It's been renamed, but our hearts will always be in the Provo Temple, even though it has been stripped down. There's no doubt about that. Funny to parody the mobster side of Brigham. You know, maybe I can do a parody for the Mobsters and Mormons movie, which has a lot of fun moments in it. My marriage lasted longer than the temple. And the funny part, by the way, Gene, of the Provo Temple, by the way, is the dedication, which I believe was done by Joseph Fielding Smith, that said, let nothing affect this temple. Let this temple stand in perpetuity forever. Oops, it got torn down only 40 years later. So whoops, so much for that. Yeah, see, the Backyard Professor, that's what I want to do. I want to put together the ultimate supercut on the Diddly Whack Mac Mormon Daddy song and have like 30 podcasters in there. You just sing it into your phone. Even if you only do like half of it, then I can cut them all together. And it's just lip syncing, not actual syncing, not actual singing. I think it'd be absolutely hilarious. That's what I'd like to do, but I don't know if people will join in on it with me. Let's keep watching this video here. The funky Cold Medina here. And of course, I'm using AI to help me out with these photos here. I think I look pretty good on that Vespa. I used to own a Vespa, by the way. That's like a Metropolitan. I still have a moped, by the way. That's a 50cc small motorcycle, you know, for those metrosexuals like myself out there. I was born in the church with the little baby blessings. Yes, I was in the late 1970s to my family in Florida. I was born in Hollywood, Florida, not far Broward County. I only lived there for a couple of months. Then we moved to Salt Lake City a short time after that.
Just like my daddy was. Yo, I'm pioneer stock. My grandpa crossed the plains in the snow.
And my grandpa really did. Well, actually, I'm a seventh generation Mormon. My great grandpa did cross the plains. I don't know if it was in the snow, but yes, that's hitting close to home for me because that is a factual statement.
I got my Eagle Scout at 12 with some assistance from my mom.
I like the mom here. That is like every Mormon mom out there. You know what I'm saying? Now, I did not get my Eagle Scout at 12, even though this particularly said it. I was in a great troop, a Boy Scout troop, when I was in Oklahoma. And then when we moved to Salt Lake City, my LDS sacrament, my ward, it had like no Boy Scout program. There was no young men, and there was literally no program. You didn't go there on Wednesday nights or Tuesday nights, and I ended up being a Life Scout. So, you know, I came up short. What can I tell you?
I was home before 9:30 when I went to the prom.
I did go to a lot of dances when I was in high school. I didn't necessarily go to proms, but actually I went to a lot of girls' choice dances. Believe it or not, I was a little bit more popular with the ladies back in high school. I've since dropped off on my appeal level.
I love to sit in my pew and praise the Lord with a hymn.
And this particular picture actually comes from my video, which I released, which was called my last sacrament meeting, which I gave my last sacrament meeting in December of 2010 in Sandy, Utah. On this particular thumbnail I got from there. If you want to go back and watch that, you can see what my last testimony was. The last time I gave a testimony in church was in 2010, and this came from that particular episode there. Let's see, what do we got? I need to move. Apparently swearing is a criminal offense down Salt Lake City. You're from down south. Let me see. I'm checking up with this. Once girls became my hobby at 14, I was done with Scouts.
You and praise the Lord with a hymn. Amen. I'm hyperactive, yo. I even got the keys to the gym.
And this is from the Sons of Provo movie, where the guys in the Sons of Provo, they're supposed to be a boys band, right? So they have half of the cultural hall, speaking of the cultural hall, half of the cultural hall, they're supposed to be doing the singing on this, but the other half is booked out for the scouting and the young men's, and it's ruining this couple's marriage. I'm telling you, it's the Sons of Provo is just so funny.
I'm a diddly whack Mike Mormon daddy.
Yeah.
Yo, my peeps all be conforming cause it's cool to be a
Now, this is the I Am a Mormon campaign, right? Which was popular under Thomas Monson. Then, of course, Russell Nelson absolutely torpedoed it when he came out in, was in 2019, I believe that it was April 2019, who he basically disavowed the word Mormon. And as far as being a police officer, I'm not a member of the police officer. I'm not a member of law enforcement. I never could be or would be. That is absolutely not my cup of tea. It's just, I like to digitize myself into these AI photos. It's, you know, kind of an egomaniacal endeavor. What can I tell you? Now, my wife says that this particular photo is really hot. And I use the firefly effect on this to kind of give it that sparkle. And I do like this picture a lot. You know, if I ever give up Mormon YouTubing, I'm probably going to go out with that picture, by the way, because I do think that that is a hot look on my part. No doubt about it. And of course, I was a member of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, specifically with the orchestra at Temple Square for several years. So I used to sing with these ladies, or at least I used to play music with them. So the Mormon Tabernacle Choir is absolutely one of my favorites. I love the Motab, and I still listen to them to this day. I will cue them up from time to time, some of my favorite hymns, and going back to those great memories of even going on tour as a member of the orchestra at Temple Square, going on tour with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Nothing, I mean, telling you folks, nothing beats the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Excuse me, they've been renamed the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square, but that I'm still going to call them the Motab. And I really, if you go back and watch, you can go back and watch some of those old episodes, and you will find me in the orchestra if you look carefully enough. I don't think anybody out there has that kind of time, but yeah, I love the Motab.
I'm a diddly whack Mike Mormon daddy, and I'm spiritual.
And this is the monkey from the Lion King, right? What is his name? Rafi? Anyway, he's the guiding one in the Lion King, right? Now, I got this clip here from Cults. You know, this is the Hosanna shout. I figured it'd be pretty ridiculous to put this in. And of course, it's got the Elder Oaks with the left shark in there as well, where he's not quite as synced up. And then I gave it a disco overlay. You can see that there's a disco light that's going along with it. See the disco light that's flashing here? That makes it even more ridiculous. And I used a glitch filter as well. So it's trying to make it, you know, kind of lampoon. This is somewhat of a weird and quite frankly, a very cult-like practice here. Even though a lot of people hold it sacred, I do understand that. Yes, Broadway Rafiki is a female. Good to know. I appreciate that. So, and whenever I can, my calling card on my videos, I try to remember to pop up the card over there at Ward Radio. This is his mugshot back from when he snuck a knife into the TSA. And I always have him pop up on my videos whenever I can. There's a lot that goes into a video like this, honestly, and Coach will tell you that for sure. This video, even though it's only 3.5 minutes long, it probably took me about 3.5 hours. There's every single second is curated. It takes a lot of time. And I quite frankly will tell you that I am disappointed that it only got a couple hundred views, but I still really like this video a lot. I've listened to it far too many times. I love the Sons of Provo soundtrack so much. I can listen to that thing all day long. I actually have a couple more parody songs that are going to come out based on the Sons of Provo soundtrack, which is my absolute favorite. And the great thing about the Sons of Provo soundtrack is that it's not copyright struck. It's not copyrighted. They let the copyright go, and you can just make all the parody videos you want. And as Cults will tell you, a lot of songs will get copyright struck, and you won't make any money off of the videos, which is a problem. Luckily, Sons of Provo, no issue with that. Yeah, the Hinckley clip is from the Tears of Fear parody song. Right. Yes. Whenever I always try to use as much of Culture's stuff that I possibly can without giving the slightest bit of attribution. That's really my modus operandi. And this is my favorite scene here coming up here Uh, Harold says it would have taken him 3 months. Listen, Harold, it took me years to get to the very rudimentary level that I'm right now. Colch is still way up here, and I'm still in the middle here, but I am creeping up on him ever so slowly. I don't know if I'm gaining ground on him because he's getting better too. But I've been doing this podcast now for almost 3 years, and my editing and my content creation skills have come a long, long way. I had no background in this stuff whatsoever. I was a musician. I was an educator. I was basically an academic. I was a teacher. I didn't know anything about making this type of content whatsoever. So it's all self-taught here. And by the way, I hope that you do like my moniker here, because I am not Corbin V. Just in case anybody wants to know that for a certainty, I just want to set the record straight that I am not Corbin V. But yes, that's my calling card here. Now, this is my favorite section here that I put into this next one. And let's play that through here. It's got Pee Wee Herman in there, who's passed on, right? Pee Wee Herman, he's dead, isn't he? Paul, is Pee Wee Herman dead? Pee Wee Herman is dead. Yeah, he died in 2023. He died in 2023, so it's kind of inviting you to come on here now. Yeah, that's right. Radio Free Mormon is behind me. Yes, those of you, all of my stuff has lots of very, very small jokes in there, and you can see that my name, along with my background, I always have a lot of hidden jokes that are in all of my stuff. But I like this next scene. This is my favorite scene. It was kind of the hardest one for me to put together. If a girly now. I had to have, it says, if a girly walks through. Okay. So I had to have something that was kind of sensationalized here, but not too offensive. I don't want to go beyond the pale here. So, I just Googled a couple ones, and you'll see I've got the nice tuxedo on. I do like my look there. I think I look incredibly handsome with this tuxedo. It's a nice look with the sparkles. And then you're going to see, hey, yo, I'm not hanging out with these. It says in the song, if a girly walks through, I'm not hanging with that. So watch what I do.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. If a girlie wants to pursue me, do me, I say no, girl, not with you, me. I'll be waiting for my baby.
No, girl. So I can use the eye, the laser eye. That was kind of tricky to synchronize it and to get to blow them out of there. If a girl walks through and she's not modest, yo, folks, modest is hottest. And I'm gonna zip those. I'm gonna zip them out of there. They're out of here.
Me, do me, I say no, girl, not with you, me. I'll be waiting for my baby.
Yeah, dressed in white, which is what we see in this next scene, which is a beige dress.
Dressed in white. Not beige.
Not beige. Come on. It's going to be dressed in white in the temple. That's how you know you're a diddly whack Mac Mormon daddy. DVs, have you learned how to use keyframes yet in your editing? No, sir. I still need a lot of help. You're going to have to help me out with that for sure. And then you're going to have to tell me in this next scene, is this too offensive here coming up here? Because I snuck in some additional stuff in here if you listen.
I believe in procreation.
Whoa! I believe in procreation. I believe that procreation is not a form of recreation. I absolutely love that saying. That is so pure. And if you listen to the background, you'll see that I snuck in a little bit of raunchy stuff in the background. Listen carefully.
Beige. I believe in procreation.
Now, this is for those chat pros out there. Where did I get this particular clip from here that we're seeing here? Some of you chat pros will know where I got that. I'm going to move on as soon as somebody can name it, because this is a very famous scene in Mormon cinema. And this, quite frankly, is one of the great things about doing the Mormon movie reviews. Is I've watched so many Mormon movie reviews out there. I have 200 episodes of Mormon movie reviews, and I still have more that are ready to be released. But A. Ross, hey, gold star to you, my friend. Gold star. I think I can star that here. From the Godmakers, specifically Jeremiah Films released. We had Ed Decker and Dave Hunt, who released the Godmakers in 1982. And then Jeremiah Films had a video version that went along with it. And of course, they toured around. Ed Decker was a former Mormon, and Dave Hunt was a fundamentalist, very conservative evangelical. And they basically would go on tours and bash Mormons. I really hate that video, to be quite frank with you. I think it's really the worst of anti-Mormonism, in my opinion. It has a lot of disingenuous arguments, and I find the whole thing to be really, really distasteful. And I do have a video that's coming out about the God Maker soon. But anyway, this is from the 6-minute segment, the so-called Band of Mormon cartoon that's about 6 minutes long. And I do have a full video that's coming out reviewing the Band Mormon cartoon, which is only 6 minutes long, but my video review is about an hour long. Melissa Grenfield also reviewed the Band Mormon cartoon if you want maybe a more pop culture type treatment on it. So yeah, that's right. God Makers, you guys know your stuff. Very, very good. Yeah. Aha. Now, I believe that procreation ain't a form of recreation. Now, this also has a Mormon connection. Yo, folks, I don't just put random stuff in here. Every single one of these clips is an inside Mormon joke. Now, who was the first one that got this before? Who was the one who got the God Makers? That was A. Ross. Okay, let's see who can name this scene, because this has a Mormon connection too, by the way. You might not think that it does, but it absolutely does. Ain't a form of recreation. So what scene is this from that we're seeing right now? And let's see if anybody can get this. I'm waiting in the chat here. Yeah, so let's see here. Seeing if anybody can get this one too. I believe that procreation ain't a form of recreation. We got a couple of guys in a tent. Okay. Anybody can get this one. I'm waiting on the live chat on this one too. Anybody know where this one's from? This has a significant Mormon connection out there. This is a same-sex relationship. I'm trying to drop the hints out there to see if anybody can help us out here. Well, I'm not seeing anybody, so maybe this was too obscure out there. Brokeback, A. Ross, you know your stuff. Another gold star to A. Ross. Now, I'm not going to belabor the point here, but this actually has a significant Mormon connection as well. Because back when Brokeback Mountain in 2006, when this was released, Larry H. Miller, who was a very prominent Mormon and owned a number of theaters in Utah, he banned Brokeback Mountain from his theaters because it showed a gay sex scene. Okay, so what's ironic about this is that Larry H. Miller had no problem showing any of these movies in his theaters as one of the OG Mormons who actually financed a number of Mormon movies and was worth millions or even billions of dollars. He had no problems showing scenes of consensual heterosexual sex and all kinds of degenerate activities, from violence and murder and even rapes and all this other stuff. But the Brokeback Mountain scene hardly showed anything in the tent. But he banned that one out. So he finally, I guess, broke his silence on that. He said, actually, I want to see what he actually said about that. I didn't realize that he had finally broken his silence. And he has passed away. He passed away from, I believe, type 2 diabetes here. I've been debating how to open my remarks. The hats are in a statement. What did he say about it? Hard feelings. Sorry. He says he's more sensitive to prejudice and violence facing some gays and lesbians. It seems like he's somewhat sorry about the fact that he banned this movie out for absolutely no reason out of his movie theaters. I totally understand that. Okay, so I believe that procreation ain't a form of recreation. We got Brokeback Mountain in there. That's a little tip of the hat to Larry H. Miller and the entire controversy back in 2006 when this caused a great deal of consternation among Mormons in the Morador.
Former recreation, and my testimony keeps me warm at night.
Yes, and who can name this general officer of the church, not a general authority, a general officer of the church with an incredibly famous general conference address here. She's got her pearl necklace here, and she's literally clutching her pearls. And I actually clipped in what I believe is the most cringeworthy moment out of her entire talk here. If you go back and watch my 50 most cringeworthy moments of Mormon history, this definitely does appear here. Yes, he broke his silence on the Brokeback Mountain thing, but this is a legendary General Beck. Aha, JB, that's right, Julie B. Beck. Was she the general? Was she the General Relief Society president, or was she the Young Women's president during this time? I can't remember which, but she has her finger up here because she said that one little drop of coffee will cause a person to forfeit their entire eternal salvation. This is one of the most legendary clips of all time. I even got her with the finger wag here, which is the exact moment that she drops the truth bomb that says that if you drink coffee, be prepared to live anywhere besides where God is. Yes, Relief Society president. Yes, I believe that is correct. Very nice. Okay, so that's why I said you're going to be my testimony keeps me warm at night, because a testimony, of course, is based on the burning in the bosom, the squishy feelings that you have deep down in your soul, that you know that Sky Daddy is taking care of you. And I just like to have myself in there with Julie talking about the coffee, and then the testimony keeps you warm at night, so flippin' warm. And that is just perfect Provo language, because you don't swear in Provo. It's practically a capital offense. So flip, use substitute swear words, flippin' and fetchin' for the F word. And instead of hell, you say heck and all of these things. It's absolutely, yes, the wagging of the finger. She's going to lay down the law for all of you out there that think that coffee is okay. She's letting you know that it's not. That testimony will keep you warm at night. So flippin' warm.
I'm a diddly whack Mac Mormon daddy. Yo, my peeps all be conforming, cause it's cool to be a Mormon. I'm the blackjack Saint on a crack daddy, oh. I'm a diddly whack Mac Mormon daddy. I'm spiritual.
Now, all of the point, all the way up until this point, I haven't used 1 minute from the Sons of Provo movie. Now, in the Sons of Provo movie, they would sing all of these songs, but they weren't complete music videos. So there's only partials of the songs. So this is the first time that I went in and grabbed out of the Sons of Provo some of the footage there and then synced it up to the actual song here. Now, the boy band in Sons of Provo is called Ever Clean, which is a tip of the hat to Ever Clear, which is another band that's out there. And once again, we have Will Swenson here at the bottom. We have Kirby Hayward. These guys are absolutely hilarious. Will Swenson, he's an absolute comedic genius. He also did Singles Ward. He did a couple of other Mormon movies. He's an OG and very underrated.
Would all those in favor please make it manifest? Please make it manifest. Please make it manifest. Would all those in favor please make it manifest? I'm the diddly whack Mac Mormon daddy.
And then, of course, now, this is an ode. Obviously, this has got to be an ode to Eminem, right? Russell Mathers. That's his name, right? Russell Mathers. Am I saying that right? What is Eminem's real name? I'm sorry. Eminem's real name? Am I saying Marshall Mathers? I'm sorry. Obviously, this entire section is a tip of the hat to Marshall Mathers. That's why I figured juxtaposing him with Elder Oaks with the please make it manifest. Whenever you're sustaining general authorities, general officers of the church, or whoever, you always have to make it manifest by raising usually the right hand. According to Elder Oaks himself, by the way, you're supposed to use the right hand, even though you can technically use either one of the hands, but you're supposed to make it manifest by signifying. And that's where all those in favor, please make it manifest. That's where you get the right hand up there. Right. And as Cultural Hall said, won't the real Slim Shady please stand up? And so in the video that I used here, I actually got the Marshall Mathers, won't the real Slim Shady please stand up? Please stand up. Please stand up. So I'm queuing it all together there. And I think it's a fun juxtaposition of Talon Oaks and Marshall Mathers. I don't think you're going to find any videos on YouTube, folks, that put those two together on a video. This might be the only one. This might be the only one out there. Right. And as we know, really, Nemo the Mormon started his road to excommunication. And he very first came into my attention by the fact that he voted no for his in-state conference, and then he videotaped him. That's the first thing that I ever saw him do. Now, I know that he's been on YouTube for about 5.5 years, but it was only about 2.5 years ago, I believe, that he voted no in state conference, which is considered a major affront. In fact, the church, if you vote opposed in one of these things and you're a church employee, you can literally be terminated on the spot. I removed the background of the Eminem video just because I thought it would be a good thing to do. Actually, if I were to go back and remove the background again, I would do a better job. I know how to do it better now than even when I made this video. And this is one of the issues actually that I have, is that I have a backlog of about 6 months worth of content that is waiting to be released. And this is the problem here, is that it's kind of like some of my older content is not quite as good, but I want to cycle through it. So it's kind of like Ender's Game, where they like send the old spaceships to go fight the buggers, and you have to fight with what you have. In a couple of months content, once I've cycled through that old content, I'm going to have some amazing content that's coming out. And like I said, my goal is to go out on top as the king of Mormon YouTube. I am the king of the Sons of Provo. I am the Diddly Whack Mac Mormon Daddy, and I am talent on loan from Kolob, and I am inevitable.
Make it manifest, will all those in favor please make it manifest. I'm the Diddly Whack Mac Mormon Daddy. People tell me that's funny to give a tenth of all your money, but I do it with no regret because of all the blessings that I get. I ain't stupid
or lazy, and that's why I got Russell Nelson with the Lazy Learner in there. Now, the Sons of Provo was released, I want to say, in 2002 or 2003. This was that same time frame right after God's Army really brought Mormon cinema to the silver screen in that particular wave of Mormon cinema. So we didn't have the Lazy Learner at that time, but I figured if you say I'm not stupid or lazy and you put Russell in there with the Lazy Learner, I thought that was perfect.
Lazy, I read my scriptures like crazy. I don't smoke or drink or cheat. I spent 2 years on my feet.
Yes, I love this. One of my favorite memes out there. No coffee for me, thanks. I don't do drugs, with this cheesy Provo white guy holding up the Book of Mormon. That is one of my favorite memes. And if you go back and watch my video review, which I did with the Rebecca Biblioteca, of the church's 1980 cup of coffee film strip, you will see that this meme makes it into there as well. There's nothing like Mormon coffee memes. I just love them so much, and I can watch them forever. Let's see here. You also remove the background. Yes, I removed that. Let's see here. I never read that one. I'm catching up with this. D-Vase and I are so different. He's got months of video stash where I go video to video. Once I finish one, I put it out. Well, that's the difference between a bunch of mediocre content that I put out, Culch, and top tier quality that you put out. And Diamond Dave, welcome back to the Mormon News Roundup. We're in the after party. Really appreciate it. This is just mostly my random thoughts here. He's like the church holding billions. He's like a family. I'm like a family living paycheck to paycheck. I appreciate that. Oh, yeah, I can't. I'm a moron. Yes, Culch has a good video on that. There's no doubt about that. Better than sacrament meeting. I appreciate it. Thanks so much, everybody out there. If you can hit the like and subscription, I really appreciate that.
That's more valuable to me than any prize. Preaching love and peace with other well-dressed guys.
And I don't like the photo that I put in on this one. I should have put in a full-length photo of myself in here. But yes, preaching love and peace with other well-dressed guys. We've all been there. Well, at least a lot of us have been there, preaching that love and peace with other well-dressed guys. Those missionary times. And like I said, I served a mission in the Washington, D.C. area, and my home that I live in right now is in one of my mission areas. In fact, I baptized somebody in this ward, 20, 30 years ago. And I probably knocked on this particular door because back when I was a missionary here in the Northern Virginia area, I was working with a very hardworking elder, and we absolutely pounded this area to death. I mean, there's thousands of homes here, and we basically got through them all in 3 months. It was a massive working endeavor, all on bicycles. I mean, we absolutely blitzkrieged this neighborhood. And I can tell you that our success rate was abysmally low. This is a very high income area. The homes here are ridiculously expensive. The average home where I live is $800,000. And it was very expensive back in that time frame too. People who have a lot of money are not at all interested in changing religions, period. Full stop, end of story. So we beat our heads against the wall for 2 years with very few results.
So many people let the spirits get us.
Yeah, so on this time I actually did the Slim Shady, and I swapped directly in Slim Shady directly into here because obviously they're also mimicking his particular style of delivery as well. So yeah, I waited by the yeah, and now I'm using a shaking and a strobe-like effect to make this seem even more demonic, which is also, and I put in my favorite Satan, which is going to come in from the right with a lion's roar to make this even more epic of a finish.
You want my face to be covered with mud? You stupid.
And that seems very, very evil with the Marshall Mathers, with the strobe light effect, with the flames, with the devil. And again, in the song, they're saying, I hope you rot in hell for this crud. So I think it's a perfect matchup of what we're seeing in here. What are we seeing out here? The LDS leaders could time travel. Coffee would be up there with the brick in the hat.
I'm a diddly-whack mag Mormon daddy. Yo, my peeps all be conforming cause it's cool to be a Mormon. I'm the blackjack saint or the crack daddy. Oh,
No, that is not a diddly whack mac Mormon daddy, folks. That is not how you do it. There's a visceral reaction. Whenever I see Brad Wilcox, there is a visceral reaction now that goes along with it. When you go back once again and look at my 50 top most cringeworthy moments in Mormon history ever caught on film that I did with Landon and Rebecca, if you go back, there's like 10 of them alone that are Brad Wilcox alone. The amount of barking mad crazy statements that this guy puts out is second to none. And if you also look at my fake video that I did of Russell Nelson when I did a fake interview with him, I asked Russell Nelson specifically about how a man like Brad Wilcox, who has made so many deranged comments, can actually be promoted. And I put into the words of Russell Nelson, his response was, well, just think celestial and it'll all work out. So that's kind of funny. But no, sir. No Brad Wilcox. That is true. I should have had a trigger warning that went along with this for my own video. Because whenever this comes up, I'm always like, no, not Brad. He's not a diddly whack Mac Mormon daddy. No, sir, he is not. Now, he might have been back in the 90s when he was just doing his EFY thing, but he's not doing it for me anymore.
Mormon, I'm the blackjack saint or the crack daddy. Oh,
No.
I'm the knick-knack paddywhack daddy. Yo, my peeps all be conforming cause it's fly to be a Mormon. I'm the fat knock jack Mormon daddy. I'm spiritual.
And obviously, I, don't drink the Kool-Aid like I once did, but I still consider myself to be a cultural Mormon. And technically speaking, I am still a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And for as long as they will keep me on the rolls, my plan is to continue to be on the rolls. And I imagine that if this podcast ever gets big out there, that my membership would be in jeopardy, and that would give me a great deal of pause. That would be very sad for me. But in the meantime, I am happy to say that I am a diddly whack Mac Mormon daddy. And when it comes to meeting somebody for the first time, by the way, if they see that I'm a Brigham Young University graduate and they assume that I'm LDS and that I go to church every Sunday, I'm not going to correct them. I see no reason to do that. I just think it's awkward. So I just got no issues with it.
Storms of hell might be a stormer, but I've saved me. I'm a Mormon. I'm tougher than George Foreman. I'm the bomb because I'm a Mormon. Just don't call me Norman. I'm diddly whack and I'm spiritual.
I do like this photo, which I put together, that the AI can do a lot of fun photos out there with, is me on the beach here with the Mormon missionaries. That's a hot photo. Come on, folks. If you can't give that photo a thumbs up, I think I look pretty good with the tats there. I don't know if I could, the chain, I'm not so sure about the chain, but as far as the tats are concerned, I think that's pretty good. And it's also got the guy in the Speedo in the back. I do like that Speedo. He snuck that one in there on us. He looks good with the Speedo. I think the missionaries look really good on the beach with the shorts, with the matching shorts and the name tags. I think this whole thing is just absolutely hot. And I do like that it's also mostly male missionaries. That's who I want to chill with when it comes to being on the beach with my shirt off. You know what I'm saying?
Spiritual.
Now, this next clip here is one of my absolute favorites because it comes from the movie itself and it just shows the Provo culture all the way. Now, this is Aaron Swenson, who went on to do a couple of other Mormon movies, including the sequel to God's Army 2, The States of Grace. And she became somewhat infamous for the fact that in the God's Army 2, she slept with the Mormon missionary, and she was an adult film actress who shacked up with a Mormon missionary in Richard Dutcher's sequel to God's Army 1. And then Richard Dutcher's like, gee, I wonder why States of Grace 2 didn't work. I don't know. Having a missionary sleep with a porn star, you thought that was going to go over pretty well in the Mordor? I don't think so, Richard. I mean, you tried, but no, it's not going to work out. But Aaron Swenson has also appeared in a number of other Mormon films around this time frame. And I think that she captures the Provo, the the sentiment of a Provo girl who's gone to a Everclear rap show and is highly disturbed. She's going to talk to her Mormon leader. And I put her with a filter in this particular video of a 90s type filter to make it seem more age appropriate and kind of sketchy. So that's the history behind this particular one.
Kind of started, and I was not really sure what was happening, and then the rap started, and I just was really confused, and I didn't really know what to do. And fortunately, I had an agreement with my young women's leader that if I was ever in a place where things were not very good, that I could call her and she would come pick me up. So she's gonna be here soon.
And I do love that. I always sneak Russell Nelson in whenever I can to check up. Usually I try to put him in the most ridiculous moments so that he can keep an eye on things. Always like him checking in on things, and that she's crying over this Everclear rap, which had no bad language whatsoever, and talked about rebuking the devil. And it's just so ridiculous that she is upset about this Everclear song. It's just so amazing. And that's what makes the Sons of Provo the best comedy. I can watch this all day long.
Place where things were not very good, that I could call her and she would come pick me up. So she's gonna be here soon. Rap just, it doesn't come from a very holy place, and I'm sorry, I should probably go.
I'm sorry, I should probably go. She's got the perfect vocal fry that goes along with it of somebody who's traumatized. And of course, I always got to make sure that I sneak in a picture of I also got Cardin Ellis, who makes a second appearance in there. I do really like that video a great deal. That's one of my favorite videos of all time. Okay, so I've released a couple of shorts lately here. Let's look at the visibility on these, and we'll look at the ones that are public. I released one lately, which I actually thought, I released these two. We'll watch both of these two. These are pretty fun here. This was one that I redid with Rebecca Biblioteca, where she of course, Russell Marion Nelson had his 100th birthday party here not too long ago. I do wish him the very best. I hope he has good health and no complications. I sincerely mean that from the heart. I wish him absolutely no ill will. And when we did an episode with Rebecca and I, she joked around about how she wanted to sing to President Nelson in the same way that Marilyn Monroe sang to John F. Kennedy, a very sultry happy birthday, Mr. President. And she even got out a couple of words of it, but she wouldn't finish it, which is unfortunate because I really wanted to see that, which kind of piqued my interest here. And I deep faked her into Marilyn Monroe and as an ode to President Nelson this time. And one of the things that I had to do is I had to speed it up a little bit for the deep fake to work. And I also had to cut out some of the pauses because Marilyn Monroe, when she sings it to JFK, it's really slow. It's really breathy. It's incredibly sensual. And I had to kind of speed it up and chop it out. Otherwise, it would have been too hard to make. Deep fakes are a little bit tough. I'm not as professional as Cultures, but let's check this one out here. Rebecca Biblioteca channels Marilyn Monroe to wish President Nelson a happy 100th birthday. So let me catch up with the chat here. I think I got it caught up here. Let's check out this short.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
Yeah, so I wanted to make sure everybody knew that we were talking about President Nelson here, which is why I put him in with the strobe-like effects so that we could tell who we're singing to. And you can see her face and her vocal is somewhat linked up. It's really hard to do one of these things here to make it perfect. But I do like the way that it turned out, even though it's only a few seconds long.
Mr. President.
Now, also, you're getting the shrieking sound actually comes. I went over to Psycho, that old Alfred Hitchcock classic where he's stabbing her in the shower with the knife. And those are the actual screech sounds that I pulled out of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, which I think is pretty fun. Okay, another short that I recently put out here, since we're killing some time here, I really like this one here that I also just put out here. This is, and it's got Sam Kinison, the famous comedic, on the front of it, who's not the person I really wanted in the thumbnail, but It's the one that came out in the thumbnail. What can I tell you here? And this is called Debating the Prosperity Gospel. Do Mormon Temples Fight Poverty? Featuring Jacob Hansen. I guess I got an extra quote in here. I can just save that here. I'm getting better at putting these shorts together. Obviously, you can tell I have a sardonic sense of humor here.
When are you debating
And this is from a recent Ask Me Anything that Jacob Hansen had, where Exmo Joe, who I just released, we just recorded another episode with Exmo Joe, by the way, where we discuss core horror, and we are going to be releasing that this week, which, by the way, I am probably going to do a live stream every single night for the next 7 days. So my wife's out of town, so it's time to bring on the live streams. I think I'm going to do one every single day. And I'm also thinking about, for General Conference, I'm thinking about just doing a live stream for every single one of the General Conferences. If you want to watch it with me, then I'm just going to make it available. And I'm not 1,000,000% sure that I'm going to do a full episode on Sunday night if I'm live streaming all weekend. Haven't decided about that. I have not missed an episode of this podcast in almost 3 years. There's not been one Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time where there's not been an episode. But if I'm going to live stream the entire General Conference where we can just talk about it in the chat, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. But anyway, this came from Jacob Hansen's Ask Me Anytime.
Dives or Exmo Joe? Exmo Joe? I don't know who that is. I know who Dives is.
I know him.
I know he made some random debate challenge. I think he was like preparing for it and was like calling me out, and I was kind of like, bro, what do you like? Why don't you like email me or something? Dude, like, if you want to actually do this, like, he made literally like whole videos about me apparently, and like he runs the Mormon News Review, which is kind of like, I do genuinely think, I don't know, maybe I won't say that. Say it! Dives is let's just say he's an interesting character.
The most interesting character.
If he wants to actually do a formal debate, I mean, if we can come up with an interesting and compelling topic to debate, I might be open to that. Why don't you just email me and ask, and we can talk about it instead of making entire episodes? Weird.
He doesn't remember.
Wait till they get a load of me. I am waiting.
When
Okay, so I'm going to talk through my director's commentary on this one as well. When is he going to debate D-Vase with the Mormon News Roundup?
Exmo Joe?
It's amazing. Jacob is just so funny. Jacob, honestly, he is just a master of generating interest and controversy and, just getting people riled up. That's why his platform is so outsized based on his meager talents. Okay. It's because of his ability. Jacob honestly reminds me so much of Donald Trump. His ability to generate interest is really unprecedented. So he can't just say, well, I don't know who Exmo Joe is. Who's that? He's got to be exasperated about Exmo Joe here. It's so funny.
I don't know who that is. I know who Dives is.
Yeah, he knows who I am. I mean, you've been on the Mormon News Roundup for crying out loud here. And that's why I spliced in here from Elf. I know him. I know him. Yeah, D-Vase, he does know me. Thank you so much, Jacob.
I know he made some random debate challenge. I think he was like preparing for it.
This wasn't random, bruh. And by the way, if you listen to Jacob speak and count the number of likes, I was going to do a like counter on this short because he uses the word like 12 times in 60 seconds, but I thought it would distract from the video.
And was like calling me out, and I was kind of like, bro, what do you like? Why don't you like email me or something?
Like he was like calling me out, and I was like, he was like, and then she was like, and then I know he's from Reno, but he's not a California surfer. So can we take a chill pill on the likes, by the way? And this wasn't a random challenge, man. You freaking called me out to everybody and you called me a coward. So I responded. And now your memory is so freaking poor. Now with Carly Rae Jepsen, you got to be very careful with her because you can only play about 3 seconds of Carly Rae Jepsen or she will come for the copyright strike. And by the way, I love the Carly Rae Jepsen Call Me Maybe song so much. The guy in that video who mows the lawn, that is like the most gorgeous guy you have ever seen in your life. I love this video so much. It's so much fun. And if you watch the guy in the video, that's what I like, imagine myself if I had like a personal trainer and good nutrition. That guy is hot. I mean, that is a handsome, handsome young man. But yes, Jacob, called me on the phone. He says, what about the email? Well, you got my number. I literally have Jacob's, I could text him right now on the air. And by the way, if anybody gives me a $1,000 super chat, I will put that phone number up on the live chat. And I have a standing also. If anybody ever live chats me, I've joked around about this before, but I am serious about it. If anybody ever live chats me $1,000, I will get a tattoo and live stream it. And I plan, yeah. So if anybody out there wants to take me up on that challenge, I'm willing to do it because I've always wanted to get a tattoo, just like we saw from the Diddly Whack Mac Mormon Daddy with the guy with the tats. I think it's time to try that out. But yeah, Jacob, he called me on the phone too. Let's go. That was Jacob's challenge. He's challenged, yeah, like he said, Cultural Hall. He's challenged everybody and their dog multiple times to all of these. He's challenged everybody and their mother to a bunch of debates, and then he doesn't follow through with them. So if you follow Cultural Hall over here, you'll see that Culture put this out this today that talked about people who been challenged by a debate. If you've ever been challenged to a debate by Jacob Hansen, chime in. Bonus points if you have the links to the tweet of him challenging you. Spread the word. And I was very amused by this particular thread, and I was like, there can't be that many people. And there was a bunch of people who have been challenged.
There was one.
Let's back this up here.
I'm loving the comments about clout here. I'm laughing. But there was one. Jacob, you've challenged a ham sandwich to debate on Twitter. But that's Twitter. Okay, so I'll defend you.
I always have tried to screen people to a certain extent, but
yeah. So he points out the fact that he is willing to challenge a ham sandwich on Twitter. Oh man, what's with that? Rando's challenged by Jacob Unite. So if you go through this, hey, Diamond Dave, MR does respond to people. He replied to my emails in the past. That's right. Appreciate it, Diamond Dave here. Culch, he afraid of you? No. See, Jacob, he doesn't fear anybody. CM, I feel like Jacob knows enough to impress the uninformed masses, but not enough to actually win. And Colby, oh man, this live stream was one of the highlights of my week. Hey, thanks, Colby. I appreciate that. I get kind of random with the live streams. He can't debate me now, Debbie. I'm a rando. Not enough clout for Jacob to waste his time on. So that's what you see here with this thread here, which a Culture out there. Hey, Thoughtful Saint, I think I got a catchy thumbnail you were looking for, and it's called Clout Shark. It kind of like Sharknado. You know what I mean? That's a good thing. See, that's the difference between a Culture thumbnail and a D-Base thumbnail. He's always got it to the next level. You know, Clout Shark. That could be a good film, by the way. You don't have the same motif. Fish wants to spread the truth. Jacob wants to destroy others. Had me cracking. Appreciate it. Culture. He doesn't even know who you are, bro. That's right, Colby. After tweeting literally 100 times to Culture, he forgot who he was, and he challenged me. And he has apparently a very poor memory. He can't remember who people are and who he's challenged to debates. Plot twist. Most of Jacob's subs are Exmos that can't wait to clown on his vids. See, this is what makes this man so brilliant, is he gets the hate watchers, he gets the true believers, and he gets the evangelicals that come in and tell him he's not a Mormon. He is an absolute brilliant at marketing. See, he's got the Donald Trump strategy, and he uses it to maximum effect. He has the half-truths. Everything is perfect. That's how he is able to build such an incredible brand. And look at all of these people here that he's challenged to a debate. Stacker, challenge not accepted. he even brings the receipts here. I would like to formally challenge Stacker to a formal debate with the following questions. Was Hitler's Nazi party more ideologically aligned with Democrat left-wing politics or right-wing Republican politics? What a stupid debate topic, for crying out loud. And here's another one. Searstone. He accepted my chess boxing debate, then ghosted my efforts to set it up. Searstone, I'm with you 100%. I feel you very deeply, Searstone. I'm with you 100%. And this is what makes this so challenging, is that you get challenged to a debate, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to take a lot of preparation to get ready for this thing. If I accept it, I need to be ready. So I did a bunch of debate prep. I did some live streams. I did some research. I went to scholarly articles in the Journal of Economics and a bunch of other things, and got most of my ducks in a row. And then the same thing happened to me. This is why debating is an absolute clown show. And here's some other people here. Do I get extra points if I actually had one? See, the Jim Bennett Jacob Hansen debate was an absolute folly. That was a joke of a debate, and I'm going to burn a couple of bridges in here. And the reason that debate failed was because of poor moderation. That debate had a chance to succeed, but Steve Pinecker, in my opinion, didn't do his job. You need to be a debate moderator and keep things under control. That's why you have mods. And Jacob dominated that debate, and Jim lost that debate, not because Jim had poor ideas, but because Jim tried to be reasonable, and reasoning with Jacob is not necessarily a good idea. And without good moderation, he's going to run somebody over. So, I mean, you have all of these people, this thread here. Look at this. I don't even know who all these people are. He challenged both of us to a debate. Love the image you posted in the thread. Think of how easily you could make me look stupid if I come to a debate with no good arguments and data. It's your big chance. So he's threatened everyone and their mother here to a debate, including OG Cowdery. So it should be an easy debate to win. You in? And this was with regards to, will you take on this debate? There's so many different people here that he's challenged to debates. He challenges more people to debates than, for crying out loud, it's just crazy how many people he's challenged to debate. So yeah, that's back there from Colt. So let me catch up with the live chat. I should call it sometime if, let's see here. I should call in sometime if calls are a thing. Could be interesting. Yeah, you can join the after show right now, Diamond Dave. Anyone can hop onto this program and tell me where they think that I should go wrong or where I should improve my life. I'd appreciate that. With all the acumen, he's still sitting at 24,000 subs. That's an accomplishment, though, Culch, for somebody in the Mormon sphere, especially who hasn't been around that long. He's outsized his particular talents. Jacob cut together like a 10-minute call where Dillahunty dunked on him and he called it a debate. Okay, all right, Colby. All right, Colby. Okay, I got something for you, Colby. I got something for everything. See, this is the king. This is the great thing here, Colby, about having as much content as I have, is that I got something for everything now. When you have 1,000 videos on YouTube, you got something for everything. And so this is I got my own response to that one, Colby. And this is where Jacob appeared on. Let me pull this down off of here. Jacob appeared on the call-in show, The Line, which is hosted by who you see here, Matt Dillahunty on the left, and also Jimmy Snow, who, by the way, is an ex-Mormon. Very powerful ex-Mormon, by the way. And he doesn't really hang out in the ex-Mo space. He mostly hangs out in the atheist space. But he's really interesting anyway. I put together this video that talks about Matt Dillahunty, who handed Jacob his lunch on the call-in show. So you made me play this, Colby. So I haven't released this yet, but I guess this is what you get for staying up late with me, is you get some of this random stuff here where Matt Dillahunty called him a bigoted piece of SHIT. I got to be careful. I want a G rating on this podcast.
Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good.
Just look at how Jacob was handled when he called in to a famous atheist program.
Oh, my God. Here, maybe we should deduct 90 IQ points. Steve said, I teach in a New York school. And Bob said, Steve teaches in a Pittsburgh school. Would you then look at Bob and say, he just said he teaches in a New York school? Would that be a reasonable thing for you to say?
So Steve says he teaches in a New York school, and Bob says that Steve teaches in a Pittsburgh school.
And would you look at Bob and say, he just said he teaches in a New York school?
Yeah, I would. I'd look at Bob and say, okay,
cool.
Yeah,
Now we've established that you're willing to take Bob and Steve at their word on what their names are, on what their gender is, on what their pronouns are, and that you would refer to them respectfully without investigating their genome, without knowing what their chromosomes are, without investigating gametes, without looking at a driver's license, without looking at a passport. Good job. Now you know what you need to know about gender, which is from your perspective, for anything that you need to interact with, for anything that makes any difference to you, what they tell you is what it is. Thanks for calling.
Wait,
nothing. I am tired of walking you carefully to the obvious observation after you decided to make fucking jokes about people's IQ. I don't even give a shit about IQ. It's an example of how good you are at taking IQ tests. But the fact that you smugly decided that because I have pronouns in my bio, that this somehow reduces me 30 IQ points, and you're just going to sit around and laugh and ha, while you're advocating for Mormonism or some other bullshit and pretending that you don't gender works, when in your entire life, everyone you've ever met, you have treated them with respect and talked to them by their name and used their preferred pronouns without challenging thing until it became fucking convenient for you to do it on Twitter as a way of showing what an ignorant fucking bigot you are, because you really want to say that you are the arbiter of what somebody else's gender are, and you're not. You never will be. You are a bigoted piece of shit. Thanks for calling.
Mr. Bigot.
I was about to go to bed and I just typed in Facebook and said, Jacob Hansen is, I said it, I have to own this. Jacob Hansen is an idiot. Is an idiot.
Oh my heavens. Oh man, I love this clip so much here. This is so funny where he absolutely hands him his lunch. Oh boy, wait, yeah, that's right. Wait, nothing here. I like how I photoshopped him into the driver's license and also into the passport.
Now you know what you need to.
Yeah, the more that, and this is from those PSAs, the more that you know. Da 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 da. We do have someone coming on here. Let's see here.
Know about gender, which is from your perspective.
And Matt makes a very important point here that from anyone's perspective, whatever they tell you that their gender is, for all that you need to know. See, this is the analogy here. If somebody tells you that they're a teacher, a firefighter, or whatever, Jacob has no problem calling them a firefighter or a teacher. He doesn't require any type of investigation into their credentials. If somebody says, hey, I work at the grocery store, he doesn't say, show me your ID, show me any of this. No, he just accepts. Just like most people just accept what people tell them. Why is somebody's gender so different for people like Jacob or Greg Mattson? Matt brings up an absolutely brilliant point that for all intents and purposes, whatever anybody tells you about their name, whether they have a pet, any of these type of things doesn't require investigation. Matt absolutely hands him his lunch
for
here.
Anything that you need to,
and I do
with,
like that.
That makes I'm tired.
I like how he says,
"Thanks for calling."
He says, "Thanks for calling," and then Jacob goes, "Wait."
Wait,
That's it.
nothing.
That's the last thing
I'm
that he got out was
tired
just
of
wait.
Walking you carefully to the obvious observation after you decided to make fucking jokes about people's IQ. I don't even give a shit about IQ. It's an example of how good you are at taking IQ tests. But the fact that you smugly
I like it, and I like the filter that I used for this smug section here, where it's got Jacob, and I put Jacob with a rainbow behind him because I know how much that upsets him. So I've got a very smug look on his face with the rainbow and then the pulse filter going. That's what makes this particular section so funny.
The fact that you smugly decided that because I have pronouns in my bio, that this somehow reduces me 30 IQ points, and you're just going to sit around and laugh and ha ha ha.
That's for you, Songs, right there. Songs, this little part right here is just for you, Songs.
Ha ha ha, while you're advocating for...
I love Brad Wilcox here with the crazy filter because Brad Wilcox is crazy, while Jacob is advocating for Mormonism or some other SHIT.
Mormonism or some other bullshit and pretending that you don't gender works, when in your entire life, everyone you've ever met, you have treated them with respect and talked to them by their name and used their preferred pronouns without challenging thing until it became fucking convenient for you to do it on Twitter as a way of showing what an ignorant fucking bigot you are, because you really want to say that you...
See, and that's why I got the Twitter up there with what Matt said, ignorant effing bigot. I like that screenshot right there. That's the thumbnail that I should make, even though I made a different thumbnail.
You are the arbiter of what somebody else's gender are, and you're not. You never will be. You are a bigoted piece of shit. Somebody...
See, I like that he's got the smile on his face, and then when Matt hands him his lunch, you get the "aw," and then he gets sad.
Somebody else's gender are, and you're not. You never will be. You are a bigoted piece of shit.
And now Jacob is sad while Matt absolutely crushes him. I just love this clip so much here. It's so funny.
Thanks for calling.
Thanks for calling. And I like that's the mic drop moment, even though it says Black awareness, but you get the idea. And Monica here, I love the sass that Monica gives in this last clip here. Let's see if I can get that up correctly.
You piece of shit. Thanks for calling.
Mic drop, and then Monica.
Mr. Bigot.
Mr. Bigot. There's something perfect about the contrast between Matt Dillahunty and his absolutely a type A personality and Monica and her aloof Hollywood airs. I think it's just absolutely hilarious. And then I spliced in the Thoughtful Faiths theme song. And then I found this clip from Steve Pinecker And if you've made Steve Pinecker mad, you've really gone off all reservation here.
I was about to go to bed and I just typed in Facebook, said, Jacob Hansen is, I said it, I have to own this. Jacob Hansen is an idiot.
Oh, this is gonna be.
I haven't released that yet. I've got see, the problem is I've got so much content out there. I do see somebody who wants to come onto the program. I'll get with you in a minute. I've got so much content out there and I just can't release it all because I would just overwhelm everything. And I've got to wait and work through all of my content. I've got all of these unlisted videos here, which are some of my absolute best work is all unlisted at this current point while I wade through good content, but not as good as I'm making it now. So, hey, Diamond Dave, welcome to the Mormon News Roundup. We've exchanged a couple of emails, buddy. What do you want to talk about that's Mormon related?
What's up? Hope everyone's doing good. So, yeah, I wanted to talk about, so I've seen a little bit of Jacob's stuff, and, you know, I don't have a stake in the Mormon, ex-Mormon fight. My sphere is more celebrity, fashion, gaming, that kind of a thing. So I come from a more much bigger side of the internet, you could say, right? And when it comes to like clout chasing, that's something that I've seen in the gaming side. I see in the celeb side, following celebrities, Ice Spice, Beyonce, international ones like Janvi Kapoor. I got to respectfully disagree. I don't necessarily, my personality is very different than Jacob's, and I don't think we'd necessarily agree on a lot of things, but I don't see him as a clout chaser. Usually clout chasers get involved with high level drama of someone who's got big Facebook followings, right? So he's got what, 25, 26,000 followers on YouTube, which is pretty sizable. I got 116,000 followers on Facebook. And usually what I see clout chasers do is people of that level or in the millions, they'll get in the mix and then they will take and commentate to a much bigger audience than the Mormon, ex-Mormon sphere is. Real quick, the way I see it is you have like the whole sphere of the internet, right? So it's one whole thing. And then one section of that is in religion. And then a smaller section within religion is Christianity. And within a smaller section of that is Mormonism and ex-Mormon space. And that's really where the Mormon, ex-Mormon's going on in its entirety. Now, I get it. It may not be a popular opinion, but, you know, that's personally just the way I see it, being an outsider looking in.
Well, I'll just say a couple of things. Jacob has called in, for instance, to the line. He's called into the Atheist Experience. He's called into Doug over there at Pine Creek. He's done debates with a number of evangelicals and people with larger platforms, including a recent one with Trent Horn, where Colby Reddish, who's in the chat, and I did a debate breakdown on that. He seems to be trying, you know, he goes on to Word Radio. He goes on to Greg Mattson. He's really trying to pump out the content out there and get with a lot of different people in a lot of different spheres. And the thing about Mormonism is it has a small appeal generally. So he's not going to be like one of these big time influencers who's going to get to 1 million views. No Mormon will ever get to 1 million views. The largest platform out there is like Lexi George or Mormon Stories, and they're capped at 300,000 subscribers on TikTok or on Mormon Stories. You will never breach 500,000 if you're in the Mormon sphere, at least from my perspective. So he's trying to chase those, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I'll be honest. I've called into his show once. I am not very familiar with him as a person. I am under the impression, because I'll hang out with anyone who's kind to me, and I do hang out with people in Ward Radio, and I'm expecting to be flamed for being on here talking to you in the first place, which is fine. I can handle that. But when it comes to Jacob, I think it's I don't know. He's always struck me as an apologist, right? A defender of the faith. And coming from, you know, having been a convert to the church and coming from outside the church, I've always been under the impression that apologists do these things anyway. I don't necessarily have enough evidence one way or another to say this is a Jacob thing, as opposed to just saying, okay, he's just one of many apologists. Okay, so I see some comments in the chat. Hey, you know what? I still like you guys. But yeah, I've always been under the impression that just Christian apologists as a whole across the board do this regardless of whether or not they're Jacob Hansen. If that makes sense.
You're probably right about that. And James puts into the chat that maybe Mormon Stories will get to 500,000. I mean, that could possibly happen. It's going to take a couple of years to get there, but
I can see it. I can see it, but I do agree with you at the very least that like the Mormon ex-Mormon sphere, I referred to it in Ward Radio as Mormon TMZ because you've got like, LDS apologists who are just, taking pot shots at the antis, and then you have the antis taking pot shots back. And really it's just like, okay, this is like, Ice Spice falling out with her ex, and then everyone's just fighting in the comments.
Yeah, and it's very small potatoes when you compare it to a lot of the larger channels out there, because it's really the Christian ex-Christian channels that have the potential for having the most amount of subscribers. The Mormon ex-Mormon, it's never going to get there just because there's not enough Mormons. It's a shrinking dogmatic theocracy that only has about 4 million active members, and there's just not enough ex-Mormons out there that are going to care about the content like there's ex-Christians. This is not a dominant religion in anywhere except for Utah. So if you look real quick, Diamond Dave, if you look, we did a video review, Colch and I did, of the top 5 most liked Mormon TikToks of all time. And we also did a review of the top 5 most liked ex-Mormon TikToks of all time. And what Colch and I determined from those particular episodes is that not one of these TikToks in the Mormon or ex-Mormon sphere has more than 1.5 million likes. That's the cap currently. But if you look at the wider, as you look at the wider web, you get some of these TikToks that'll have 1 billion likes. I mean, the potential in Mormon and ex-Mormon space is very, very small. And I still think that Jacob is trying to get the clout within his small bubble.
I mean, I can appreciate that line of reasoning. This might be just a point where we agree to disagree. Like I said, I don't know him as a human being. I've called into him and I've talked to his show and talked to him a few times. He hasn't struck me personally as a bad person or someone that's, immoral or detestable. But again, I don't know the whole situation. To me, if that's true, like taking your argument and just kind of analyzing it, if that is true, it's still hard for me to resonate with, because if he's trying to build in that space, he would be trying a wide variety of marketing strategies that he's just not doing, ranging from everything from clickbait to more graphic videos, more music videos, kind of things that you've had on your stream tonight to appeal to a broader audience who may not be in the Mormon ex-Mormon space, but may be interested in it, right? Because the whole term cult corn it is a thing, right? So I would think that he would be utilizing more broad marketing strategies than what he's already doing, and he would be more invested in it than from what I've seen thus far. Is just kind of my thoughts.
Let me, because we had some email exchanges, Diamond Dave, a couple of months ago, and you might remember you are on Ward Radio probably a couple of times a week, right? Maybe once or twice a week. You drop in, right?
I used to be before I got my own YouTube and stuff taken off,
right.
But yeah.
Okay, but you go in there occasionally, and you come into these podcasts occasionally, so you're kind of a guy who's can be on both sides of the aisle. You remember when I was on Ward Radio and they called me Hitler. They said that I was a Hamas terrorist. They said that I was a neo-Nazi. They compared me to a neo-Nazi. They compared me to QAnon conspiracy theorists. They said that I was supposed to be exterminated like a bug. There was all that went along with that. And I remember your particular email that you sent to me about that and said, well, they didn't actually say that they wanted to kill you or rape you. And therefore what they said can be reasonable because that's really where the terms of service for YouTube, where they draw the line on. Do you remember that conversation that we had? And you
honestly, vaguely. I remember you getting dogpiled in the chat, and I remember trying to address specific comments in the chat, but the chat honestly was just one big shit show, and I couldn't keep up with it. That's why I kept commenting, "This is wild." And even in the beginning, I think it was that video. Even in the beginning, I was kind of trolling a bit in general, where I'm just like, oh yeah, time to shit on the liberals. You know what I mean? Because if you notice, what I do is I just go in there and I crack jokes. And in fact, all of my super chats is just been me like, hey, you guys are cool. Here's something witty or funny, you know? I don't recall specific things that were said, but I do know you got dogpiled. I do know that. And then I also recall being confused by the emails, which, hey, you got me pulled up. Look, there's my pretty face.
Yeah, so this is what you sent to me after I basically, you're right.
Sure,
I got
let's talk about this. I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, after I got dogpiled on Word Radio, which I released a full 1 hour response video to, by the way, I finally manned up and did that. But this is, I was saying, you know, I got a lot of name calls on me on Word Radio, which I find to be, you know, distasteful. But this is what you said. Let me read what you said about that. And I want to hear your opinion now that we're talking face to face. And
Sure.
I said, I didn't appreciate having being name called on there, where I already mentioned that he said that I was a hypocrite, a woke scold, a weak person, amoral, anti-Mormon, rage quitter, cry bully, attacker, terrorist, woke scold, not Christ-like abuser, Hitler, Hamas terrorist, QAnon conspiracy theorist, everything else. And that was only in like 5 minutes. And this is what you responded back on this. And I want to hear what you have to say about that. You said, well, it's probably a difference of opinion on what name calling is. I don't see that as name calling, but I'm in the gaming sphere where death and rape threats are common. So this is what I'm trying to say is, do you think that Word Radio's typical rhetoric here is beyond the pale, or is that, or am I kind of, you know, just too, am I just too weak, or I need a thicker skin? Because they didn't say they were going to rape me or kill me, but they did call me a bunch of names.
So this is going to probably sound a little bit off, but I don't know. And the reason is you were in a fundamentally different sphere, right? I grew up in the era of Call of Duty chat lobby. I've been doxxed. I've had death threats against me. I've done the same when I was a teenager. I know people have been swatted in the gaming sphere. And this is long before I, you know, even joined the church. This is long before I joined the church. I personally have just been of the personal opinion that if you are in the chat of either quote unquote an opposing side, or if anyone is a public figure, you have to expect to take some flack. And that's what I said. That's why I kind of joked about earlier, saying Ward Radio is probably going to find out I'm here talking to you. I'm going to get a ton of flack. That, you know, there needs to be, in my opinion, some type of thick skin, just in my personal opinion, being any type of influencer or commentator or whatever. Because whether or not, you know, like I said, I don't recall that specific video off the top of my head because I chime in on a lot of them. But, you know, whether it's right or wrong, it's like, it's going to happen.
Yeah, you're right. And that's what I learned from that interaction, is that even though I have been in this space a while, and that obviously being a critic, you're going to gen up a lot more hatred for yourself and amicus, that I hadn't been prepared myself enough for that kind of a thick skin. And that interaction probably helped me a lot. And I do want to also point out one thing that I said to you that I think was wrong. And then I'm going to let you go, because I tried to lecture you about you being, I said, you know, you didn't say anything. You were in the shadows and nobody stood up for me. And you claim to be a follower of Jesus Christ and blah, blah, blah. And I just assumed that because you were part of the Word Radio, that you must be you must be a President Nelson fan and a follower of Jesus and all that other stuff. And I didn't really even know you. Right. So I was wrong about that.
No. And yeah. And it's like, I was confused. And that's why I responded kind of the way I did, because when I saw that, I thought, you know what, you got dogpiled. You probably saw somebody else's chat and remembered my name and just merged the two together. I've been inactive, I don't know, several months, like 4 or 5 months. So I'm not even endowed. I'm not going to bash the church, because I do think there are beautiful elements of the LDS Church, but I'm not like an apologist either. I'm inactive. I'm doing my thing. I don't have a stake. You know, I like you. I like Ward Radio. I like Cultural Hall. He seems cool. You know, anyone who's cool with me, I kick it with. And you can even go on my Facebook and see who follows me. I got everyone from transgender people that follow me, adult entertainers that follow me, to Hindu nationalists in India and radical Christians in Madagascar and Nigeria. Like, as long as you're cool with me, I'll kick it with you.
Well, thanks, Diamond Dre. Thanks for stopping by. It was nice to meet you finally. I really appreciate it. Drop by anytime, okay?
Yeah, you seem cool. Have a good one.
All right. We'll see you later. Okay, guys, I'm going to take you out with this one last video since you guys have had such a good night here. This is one that I just put together here, which is probably beyond the pale, but I'm going to show it to you anyway, and I am going to go out on this one here. And the thumbnail and the title for this, first of all, can I get a thumbs up for this thumbnail? Now that, folks, that's a thumbnail. That's how you do it here. We have the casket in the background. We have President Nelson in the foreground. And then we have Sarah Silverman with a look on her face that could cut through the ice. I love Sarah Silverman so much here. And the title of this one here is, did you guys catch this here? Sarah Silverman's disturbing prediction about the demise of Mormon prophet President Nelson. Did you guys see that? It's absolutely unbelievable. Let me read this description to you. In a shocking twist, comedian Sarah Silverman shares her unsettling thoughts on the future of President Russell Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Is it a dark joke or a serious warning? Join us as we explore the implications of her statements and what they may mean for the community. Dive into the conversation and share your thoughts. I'm going to take off this banner because we're going to go out with this one, folks. And you guys got to tell me, is this beyond the pale? Sarah Silverman, talk about being irresponsible out there. You guys tell me. This is brand new breaking news here. Thanks so much for stopping by. We're going to go out on this.
Who is this guy?
Didn't that guy die?
What did I just watch? What was that, folks? Absolutely irresponsible language by Sarah Silverman. I can't believe what I just saw. I denounce that. Just want to let you guys know out there that I denounce that type of rhetoric from the bottom of my heart. We need to keep things civil and Christ-like, and Sarah Silverman is definitely missing the mark. I want to thank all of you so much for joining me on the Mormon News Roundup. Always think celestial, and remember, no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.